At the cancer fundraising gala, named after my late wife, a security guard stopped me at the entrance and said, "Sorry, sir, your name is no longer on the guest list." 10 minutes later, my son walked out and coldly said, "The donors want to look toward the future, not an old man living in the past like you." But when I saw my daughter-in-law wearing the sapphire necklace my wife used to wear, I realized they were not just stealing the charity foundation. They were trying to erase her from this world completely. Thank you for being here with me. Before we go any further, drop a comment and tell me, have you ever been betrayed by someone you completely trusted, just yes or no? Your perspective might be exactly what someone else needs today. Quick note, some details are fictionalized for storytelling. What matters is the message at its heart. The security guard's hand pressed against my chest before I even reached the ballroom doors, and I knew 3 years of silent erosion had finally become erasure. "Sir, I'm sorry, but your name isn't on the approved list." I stopped mid-stride, the Rittenhouse Hotel's polished marble suddenly feeling less solid beneath my feet. At 68, I had spent 40 years reading hospital balance sheets with clinical precision, but nothing in those numbers prepared me for the arithmetic of betrayal waiting at this entrance. "There must be a mistake," I said, keeping my voice level. "I co-founded this foundation." The guard, young, maybe 30, with the apologetic expression of someone following orders, he didn't write, checked his tablet twice. "The list shows only family and major donors, sir. Perhaps you should contact the organizers." Family. I was the co-founder's widower, the father of the current director, the man who'd signed the original incorporation papers in this very hotel's business center 8 years ago. But my name had been scrubbed from the guest list, like coffee stains from white linen. I stepped back and looked up at the entrance banners. Estelle Townsend Cancer Care Foundation Annual Gala. My wife's name in elegant script, backlit and perfect. Below it, in smaller text, celebrating forward momentum in patient care. Forward momentum, not honoring our founders, not continuing Estelle's vision, just corporate language that erased history while pretending to honor it. I pulled out my phone and opened the foundation's website. The About Us page loaded slowly, and when it did, the biography section showed 3 paragraphs about Estelle's medical career and philanthropic vision. My name appeared once in the final sentence. Dr. Townsend's husband, Russell, provided initial operational support. Operational support. 40 years as a hospital CFO. Every system I'd built to ensure transparent fund allocation, every donor relationship I'd nurtured reduced to a footnote that made me sound like an accountant they'd thanked and dismissed. 3 years. That's how long it takes for grief to become inconvenient. 3 years since Estelle died. 3 years since I'd stepped back from active foundation management because sitting in board meetings without her felt like attending my own funeral. I'd trusted my son to protect what we built. I'd trusted wrong. Dad. I turned. Lyle stood 10 feet away, emerging from the ballroom in a tailored tuxedo that probably cost more than the foundation spent on a month of patient grants. My son was 40 now, with his mother's warm smile, though he deployed it like a corporate asset calculated, strategic, timed for maximum effect. "I didn't expect you to actually come tonight," he said, walking toward me with the loose-limbed confidence of a man who believed his own press releases. As foundation director, Lyle had transformed himself into a fixture of Philadelphia charity circles, his face appearing in the society page photographs beside wealthy donors, his title mentioned in articles about next-generation philanthropy. "I've come to every gala since we started this," I said quietly. "Why wouldn't I come?" Lyle glanced at the security guard, then back to me. "Can we talk over here?" He led me toward a quiet corner of the lobby, away from the steady stream of donors flowing into the ballroom. Through the glass walls, I could see the event space chandeliers, white tablecloths, projection screens, showing smiling patients and before-after treatment photos. Estelle's vision packaged and branded. The board made some decisions about messaging this year. Lyle began his tone taking on the smooth cadence of a practiced explanation. The donors want to see the future, not the past. They want to know their contributions are building something new, not just maintaining memories. When did my son learn to speak in corporate eulogies for the living? "Your mother built this for the patients," I said, "not for your LinkedIn profile." Something flickered across his face. Anger maybe, or shame, wearing anger's mask. "That's not fair. I've doubled our fundraising in 3 years. I've expanded our grant programs. I've made this foundation sustainable. By erasing the people who created it, by letting it evolve. He straightened his bow tie, a gesture I recognized from childhood, Lyle adjusting his appearance when he wanted to adjust the conversation. Dad, you haven't been to a board meeting in 18 months. You didn't respond to the strategic planning emails. You can't ghost the organization and then get upset when it moves forward without you. The words landed with surgical precision because they contained enough truth to make the lies hurt worse. I had withdrawn. I had stopped attending meetings. But I'd never stopped caring, and I'd certainly never authorized my own deletion from the Foundation's history. I need to get back inside, Lyle said, checking his watch. Major donor remarks in 10 minutes. We can talk about this next week if you want. He turned toward the ballroom doors, and that's when I saw her. Leona Townsend, my daughter-in-law, glided through the crowd in a designer gown that caught the light like oil on water. At 38, she had transformed foundation galas into glossy spectacles, photographed for society pages, her PR firm, billing 6 figures annually to burnish a charity she was quietly hollowing from within. She moved with practiced grace, air-kissing donors, angling for photos, performing philanthropy for an audience. But it was her necklace that stopped my breath. Sapphire. Estelle's sapphire necklace, the one she'd worn during her final chemotherapy sessions, because she said the blue reminded her of better days at the shore. The one she'd clutched in the ICU, too weak to unclasp it herself, whispering for me to keep it safe. The one my son had sworn was secure in storage, too precious and too painful to touch. Now it rested against Leona's collarbones, catching chandelier light as she laughed with a donor. At that necklace, I said, my voice barely audible. Where did she get it? Lyle followed my gaze. Mom wanted the family to use her things, Dad. You can't keep them locked away forever. You didn't even ask. I'm her son. I don't need permission to honor her memory my way instead of yours. The sapphire caught the light again, as Leona turned the same blue stone that had pressed against Estelle's skin while poison dripped into her veins in the name of healing. My son had not only erased us from the foundation, he'd looted the altar. I turned from the doors and walked back toward the hotel entrance, my hand already reaching for my phone. They thought the past was something they could simply discard, a grief-stricken inconvenience to be rebranded into forward momentum. They had no idea how meticulously the past keeps records. The house was always too quiet in the hours after midnight, but that morning, the silence felt like evidence. I'd driven home from the Rittenhouse in a fog of disbelief that had burned off somewhere around the school kill, leaving only cold arithmetic, the sapphire necklace, the scrubbed guest list, the Foundation's rebranded history. These weren't isolated incidents, they were line items in a systematic audit of erasure. Now, at 6:30 a.m., I sat in my study surrounded by the meticulous architecture of Estelle's memory. She had died 3 years earlier, at 66, but her presence still governed this room through labeled files, handwritten patient notes, and a sealed envelope marked with instructions only a hospital administrator's wife would give specific clinical and prepared for the worst. The cherrywood keepsake box rested on my desk, its brass clasp reflecting the dawn light filtering through the window. Inside her reading glasses with the tortoiseshell frames she'd refused to replace for 15 years. Her hospital wristband from the final admission, the paper soft from being touched too many times. And beneath those relics, the manila envelope. Original Foundation files established 2020. Estelle's handwriting, black ink precise capitals. Below that, in smaller script, keep sealed until needed. You'll know when. I'd kept it sealed for 3 years, honoring her instruction, the way I'd honored everything she'd asked of me in those final weeks. But last night's gala had taught me something I should have understood. Sooner my wife had never given vague instructions in her life. You'll know when wasn't sentiment, it was a trigger condition. 3 years of widowhood had taught me to read silence like a balance sheet, and this morning's quiet was hiding something. My phone buzzed against the desktop, a text from Lyle. Thought you should see this before the press picks it up. Mom knew what she wanted. Below the message, a link to the Foundation's Instagram account. I clicked it, and my screen filled with a photograph of a handwritten letter on cream stationery, the Foundation's letterhead, visible at the top. To the board and supporters of the Estelle Townsend Cancer Care Foundation, the letter began. As I face my final weeks, I want to ensure our mission continues with strength and vision. Lyle has demonstrated the leadership and innovation needed to carry our work into the modern era. Trust his judgment. Embrace the partnerships he brings. Let the Foundation grow beyond what we first imagined. The signature at the bottom read, "Love, always Mom." I stared at those 3 words until they stopped making sense. Estelle had never signed anything Mom in her life. Not birthday cards, not school permission slips, not the handwritten notes she'd left on my pillow during business trips. She'd signed everything the same way for 40 years, our private code from the early days when I'd teased her about her compulsive organization, "Your stubborn accountant." Even her final note to me, scrawled 2 days before she died, too weak to write more than 1 line. "Your stubborn accountant loves you more than numbers can measure." When had my son learned to counterfeit his own mother's love? I zoomed in on the signature. The handwriting was close. Someone had studied her script, practiced the loops and pressure points. But the M in Mom had a slight tremor at the peak, and the comma placement was wrong. Estelle would have put it after "always and not before Mom." My phone rang. Lyle's name on the screen. I let it go to voicemail, then immediately received another text. "We need to get on the same page about this, Dad. Call me." I set the phone face down and pulled open my desk's bottom drawer, where I kept the things too authentic to file away in boxes. Estelle's personal journal rested beneath a stack of condolence cards I'd never had the strength to answer. The journal was brown leather, worn soft at the corners from being carried in her purse for the last 2 years of her life. I'd read it once the week after she died, then locked it away because seeing her handwriting felt like touching an open wound. Now, I opened it to the final entries dated in the margins with her typical precision. September 14th, 3 years ago. Lyle asked today how much the foundation is worth. Not the endowment size, he knows those numbers. He wanted to know the brand value, what we could sell naming rights for. I told him we're a charity, not a marketing asset. He looked at me like I was naive. September 22nd. Board meeting. Lyle presented a proposal for corporate wellness partnerships, essentially selling patient data to pharmaceutical companies for targeted outreach. Russell would call it monetizing vulnerability. I voted no. Lyle abstained rather than support me. When did he stop seeing patients as people? October 1st. I see my mother's greed in his eyes. I thought I'd raised him better. I thought love and example would be enough. I was wrong about many things. October 8th. Told Rowena to update the trust documents. If something happens to me, Russell needs protection. Lyle will try to isolate him, wear him down with grief, take everything while he's too broken to fight. The anti-exploitation addendum goes into effect today. Lyle doesn't know it exists. October 19th, 2 weeks before she died. Dr. Morrison says I have days, maybe a week. I'm not afraid of dying. I'm afraid of what Lyle will do after. Russell thinks our son is ambitious but fundamentally good. He's half right. Lyle is ambitious. And then, on the final page in handwriting that showed the tremor of failing strength. If you are reading this, it means I was right. He will try to take everything, protect the patients. The trust attorney knows what to do. I love you, your stubborn accountant. I sat back in my chair, the journal heavy in my hands. Estelle had seen this coming. While I'd been holding her hand in the hospital, counting her breaths, trying to memorize the sound of her voice, she'd been preparing for war. She'd updated trust documents, created an anti-exploitation addendum, left instructions with the trust attorney. Rowena Sinclair, my wife's oldest friend, the woman who'd drafted every foundation document, who'd sat beside Estelle during chemo sessions, reading legal briefs aloud to pass the time. I reached for my phone and pulled up Rowena's contact information, my thumb hovering over the call button. Then I stopped. If Estelle had prepared legal safeguards 3 years ago, and if Lyle was now desperate enough to post forged letters on social media, then I wasn't grieving anymore. I was executing a plan my wife had built, without telling me a plan she'd known I'd need exactly when the silence became evidence. I looked at the sealed envelope in the cherrywood box. You'll know when. I knew. The question was not whether Estelle had prepared for this, but how much she had known. I called Rowena Sinclair from my study that same morning, and her response came without hesitation. Russell, I have been expecting your call since I saw Lyle's press conference. Now, 8 days later, I sat across from her in a converted brownstone on Locust Street, watching her pull 3 heavy legal binders from the mahogany shelf behind her desk. Rowena Sinclair had practiced trust law for 4 decades in this office, but no estate had ever demanded the precision Estelle's legal fortress required. At 62, Rowena still moved with the deliberate economy of someone who understood that wasted motion meant wasted billable hours. Her gray suit was immaculate, her reading glasses hung on a silver chain, and when she looked at me across the polished desk, I saw the same fierce intelligence that had made Estelle trust her with everything. "The original living trust," Rowena said, setting the first binder down with a soft thud. "The foundation charter, the second binder thicker, and this." The third binder was sealed in translucent archival plastic, the spine labeled in Estelle's handwriting, Anti-Exploitation Protocol. Rowena had been at our wedding, 42 years ago, had held Estelle's hand through 3 miscarriages before Lyle finally arrived. She drafted our wills, our healthcare directives, every legal document that marked the passage of our lives together. When Estelle died, Rowena had delivered the eulogy with a voice that never wavered, even as tears streamed down her face. Now she sat across from me with the same controlled grief, a woman who'd turned her personal loss into professional duty. "Estelle and I spent 6 months drafting this addendum," she said, tapping the sealed binder. "She made me promise not to mention it unless you came asking. She said you would know when the time was right." "She left instructions in her journal," I said, "about protecting the patients, about you knowing what to do." Rowena nodded slowly. "The living trust is ironclad. Every original document is in my vault, not the Foundation's files. Lyle has access to operational records, financial statements, donor databases. But the actual trust documents, the founding charter, the ownership structure, those never left this building." "He tried, though," I said. It wasn't a question. Rowena's expression shifted into something harder. She turned her computer monitor toward me and opened a secure document management system, the kind banks used for wire transfers and estate settlements. 3 weeks ago, she said, scrolling to a flagged entry dated October 28th, someone submitted an authorization request to access the Foundation trust documents, complete with your signature and a fabricated power of attorney form. The screen showed a scanned document, my name in what looked like my handwriting, a notary seal legal language about granting access to protected estate records. The signature was close, disturbingly close, but the pressure points were wrong. I could see it even without forensic analysis. Whoever had forged this had traced rather than written, leaving uniform line weight where my natural signature would have varied. "The request was flagged and denied," Rowena continued. "Whoever forged this did not realize we had upgraded to biometric authentication last year at Estelle's insistence. She said if anyone ever tried to access your documents without you present, we needed to know immediately." "She knew," I said quietly. "Even then she knew. What does it say about a mother's love when she builds a legal fortress against her own son while fighting stage 4 cancer?" "The IP address originates from 1840 Arch Street," Rowena said. "That is the Foundation headquarters. The submission timestamp was 3:47 p.m. on a Thursday. Lyle was the only director in the building. That afternoon I checked the security log after the request came through. I stared at the screen at the careful forgery of my signature, at the timestamp proving premeditation. This wasn't opportunistic theft. This was a planned assault that had begun weeks before the gala, maybe months. "How many other documents has he forged?" I asked. "I cannot say for certain. But if he was willing to forge power of attorney to access the trust, he has likely forged other authorizations as well. The letter he posted on social media is consistent with this pattern." Rowena stood and gestured toward a door at the back of her office. "There is something you need to see." I followed her into a windowless room lined with fireproof filing cabinets, each one labeled with client names and case numbers. She pulled a key from the chain around her neck and unlocked the cabinet marked Townsend Estate Primary Documents. Inside, organized with the obsessive precision I recognized as Estelle's influence, were the original signed documents that governed everything we'd built together: birth certificates, marriage license, Lyle's adoption papers. We'd never told him he was adopted, a secret Estelle had insisted on protecting until he was older, and then she died before we could tell him. The Foundation's Articles of Incorporation, and there, in a sealed archival envelope, the Anti-Exploitation Addendum. Estelle drafted this during her final chemotherapy sessions. Rowena said, her voice softening. She was very specific about the conditions. If any Foundation trustee or director uses the organization's identity assets or funds for personal debt liquidation, their authority terminates automatically. They also forfeit any family estate inheritances tied to the trust. Self-executing. I said, recognizing the legal mechanism Estelle would have chosen. No court battles, no prolonged litigation. Just automatic consequences triggered by specific actions. Yes, but it requires one specific trigger formal declaration before the board or major benefactors. The clause does not activate on suspicion or private knowledge. You must make the accusation publicly with evidence in front of the people who fund the foundation's work. A gala, I said. Rowena met my eyes. A gala. The trust does not just protect the foundation, she continued. It protects you from being declared incompetent or forced into guardianship. Lyle cannot claim you are unfit and take control of your assets. Estelle embedded specific competency safeguards that require independent medical evaluation by 3 separate physicians, of your choosing, not his. I thought of the forged letter of Lyle's corporate speak about forward momentum, of Leona wearing the sapphire necklace. She said something to me during our last session, Rowena added quietly. She said, if it comes to this, Russell will need proof that I saw it coming. He will blame himself otherwise. Make sure he knows I saw exactly who Lyle was becoming, and I still chose to protect the patients first. Rowena pulled the sealed addendum from its archival sleeve, Estelle's handwriting, visible through the translucent envelope. She paused, meeting my eyes. The question is whether you can watch your son destroy himself, or whether you will try to save him first. Rowena's question followed me out of her office and into the following week, but my granddaughter answered it before I could. My granddaughter had learned to whisper in her own home, and that told me everything I needed to know about what Lyle had become. I'd visited Greer every Thursday afternoon since Estelle died, a routine we'd maintained through grief and distance. But when I pulled up to Lyle and Leona's renovated Colonial that November afternoon, the driveway told a story the Foundation's tax filings would never explain. 2 German sedans, both current model year, both with temporary dealer plates. Through the front window, new furniture the kind featured in design magazines with deliberately vague price tags. A massive television dominated what used to be a modest living room. Greer opened the door before I reached the porch. At 13, she loved her grandfather with the quiet intensity of a child who sensed something precious slipping away, though she didn't yet have words for betrayal. "Hi, Grandpa," she said, her voice careful. "Mom said you could only stay for an hour today." She glanced back toward the home office where Leona's voice drifted through the hallway. "Brand synergy. Donor engagement metrics." "That's fine," I said. "How's school?" "Good." She closed the door with unusual care. "They got new cars last week. Dad said the foundation needed him to look successful for donors. 13 years old, and Greer had already learned that some truths require closed doors and lowered voices. "Can we talk in my room instead of the kitchen?" she asked. We had to walk past the home office. The door stood half open, and through it I glimpsed Leona at her desk, 3 monitors displaying marketing materials. She was too focused on her call to notice us. Brand guidelines, logo variations, social media templates. The header text stopped me. The Townsend Foundation modernizing cancer care for tomorrow's patients. Not the Estelle Townsend Cancer Care Foundation, just the Townsend Foundation. Every logo, every banner, every piece of material had been stripped of Estelle's name. Her photo, the one we'd used for 8 years, her smile warm in her white coat, had been replaced with Lyle's professional headshot, strategically lit and digitally retouched. Leona's eyes flicked toward the doorway. She saw me looking. Her hand moved to minimize the window. She smiled through the glass, holding up one finger to indicate her call would wrap soon. "We are streamlining the brand for modern donors," she said into her headset, eyes still on me. "Estelle would understand." Greer's hand found mine, squeezing once. "Grandpa, can I show you something upstairs?" We climbed to the 2nd floor. Her bedroom door had a new sign, "Greer's Space, Please Knock." She closed it behind us and locked it, something I'd never seen her do before. "Dad says grief branding doesn't work anymore," she said quietly, pulling her phone from her pocket. "He says people want to invest in the future, not the past." How do you explain to a child that her parents are dismantling the memory of the grandmother who died holding her hand? "Greer," I started, but she was already scrolling with shaking hands. "I recorded this by accident last week when I was helping with the camera equipment setup," she said. "They were shooting a promotional video at the foundation office. I heard them talking and I hit record." She handed me the phone. The video was shaky, filmed from a low angle, but the audio was crystal clear. Lyle's voice, "We need the hospice footage to sound more forward-looking. Can you splice the audio so she's talking about innovation instead of just patient comfort?" A man I didn't recognize, presumably the video editor. I can pull phrases from different recordings and reassemble them. As long as the tone matches, nobody will notice the edits. Leona's voice closer to the camera. Make sure she sounds like she's endorsing the partnerships. We need donors to believe this is what Estelle wanted, not what Lyle is imposing. Lyle laughing, we will splice the hospice audio so it sounds like she is talking about innovation, not patience. Nobody checks the source files. They just want to feel good about their contributions. The editor, I'll have a draft by Friday. You want me to add the music swell when she says future to make it more emotional. Leona, perfect. And Greer, honey, you need to delete that test footage from your phone. We can't have rough cuts floating around. The video ended. Greer's eyes filled with tears. Dad told me never to show anyone this. He said it would hurt the foundation if people misunderstood. He made me promise. She looked up at me, her voice breaking. Grandpa, are they lying about Grandma? I wanted to tell her no. I wanted to protect her from the knowledge that her parents were capable of such calculated desecration, but she'd already seen it, already carried this burden alone. Yes, I said quietly, they are. Her face crumpled, and I pulled her into a hug while she cried against my shoulder. When she finally pulled back, I kept my voice steady. Can I copy this file to my phone? She nodded, wiping her eyes. Are you going to stop them? Yes. Will they be mad at me? Not if I do this right. I connected our phones and transferred the video, watching the progress bar fill with evidence of fraud. You did the right thing telling me, Greer. Your grandmother would be proud of you. Dad told me never to show anyone this, she whispered again, as if saying it enough times might make the burden lighter. I knelt down to meet her eyes. Sometimes the people who tell us to keep secrets are the ones who shouldn't be trusted with them. You did the right thing. The file finished transferring. I had video evidence of premeditated fraud spoken in my son's own voice, laughing about defiling his mother's memory for donor dollars. And I had a granddaughter who needed protection from the fallout that was coming. I left Greer's house with the video evidence secured on my phone and protective fury burning in my chest. The drive home to Bryn Mawr took 20 minutes through rush hour traffic, and by the time I pulled into my driveway, the November sun was already fading behind the trees. The man in the gray suit was standing in my backyard with a laser measuring device, treating my home like it was all ready for sale. His commercial van sat at the curb, white with blue lettering, Valley Property Valuations. Professional, legitimate looking, the kind of service real estate attorneys hired for estate planning. He was methodically photographing the house's exterior, the mature oak trees, the stone patio. Estelle and I had installed the summer before her diagnosis. Can I help you? I called across the yard, my voice harder than I intended. This is private property. The man looked up from his tablet, startled but not embarrassed. Preston Odom was a licensed property appraiser in his mid-40s who had spent 20 years conducting legitimate estate valuations and had no idea the authorization document in his folder would make him an unwitting participant in elder fraud. Mr. Townsend, that's he said, walking toward me with professional confidence. I'm here on behalf of your family legal representative, standard property valuation for estate planning purposes. Nobody authorized you to be on my property. I stopped at the edge of the patio, blocking his path to the side yard. Show me your documentation. A stranger measuring the dimensions of the home Estelle and I had shared for 38 years, calculating its liquidation value while I still slept in our bedroom. Preston pulled a leather folder from his equipment bag, rifling through pages with practiced efficiency. I have full authorization right here. Power of attorney executed November 3rd. Your son requested a comprehensive market assessment for estate planning and tax purposes. He handed me a document. It looked official. Notarized. My name typed at the top in formal legal language. Russell Edward Townsend hereby grants Lyle Michael Townsend authority to conduct property assessments, estate valuations, and financial planning consultations on behalf of the principal. The signature at the bottom looked like mine. The loops, the pressure, the slight leftward slant I had developed from decades of signing budget approvals. But I never used my middle name, ever. In 40 years of signing hospital contracts, bank documents, and foundation paperwork, I had never once written Russell Edward Townsend, just Russell Townsend. Estelle used to tease me about it, said I was trying to pretend I didn't share a name with my father. Whoever forged this signature had studied my handwriting carefully enough to replicate the mechanics, but hadn't known the personal quirk that would expose them. I never signed this document, I said, quietly handing it back. I need you to leave my property immediately. Preston's professional demeanor flickered. Sir, I understand this can be sensitive, but family planning often requires difficult conversations. Your son mentioned you might be experiencing some what? I interrupted. Confusion memory problems. Is that what he told you? Preston's silence was answer enough. At what point does a son stop seeing his father as a person and start seeing him as an asset column on a balance sheet? I pulled out my phone and dialed Zachariah Whitfield. He answered on the second ring. Russell, good to hear from you. What can I... Zachariah, I need you to confirm whether I signed any property authorization documents on November 3rd. A pause. Keyboard clicking in the background. Zachariah Whitfield. 58 had managed my accounts for 20 years at Philadelphia Trust and knew my signature pressure points better than most people knew their own children, which was exactly why the forged authorization attempt had triggered every fraud protocol in the system. November 3rd, Zachariah said slowly. No, there's nothing in your file from that date. Why? Because there's a property appraiser standing in my backyard, claiming I gave my son power of attorney to conduct estate valuations. The keyboard clicking stopped. Mr. Townsend, there is nothing in your file. This sounds like attempted financial elder fraud. Do not let him leave. I need his business information immediately. I put the phone on speaker. Mr. Whitfield would like to speak with you. Preston's face drained of color. I'm a licensed appraiser. I was given legitimate documentation. This is Zachariah Whitfield, senior manager at Philadelphia Trust. Zachariah's voice came through clear and sharp. You are currently on private property with fraudulent authorization. I need your full name, business license number, and the contact information for whoever hired you. Preston Odom, license P A-RE-47832. I was contacted by Lyle Townsend's office. They sent the authorization document by encrypted email along with the work order. Encrypted, Zachariah repeated. Mr. Odom, you need to preserve that email chain and all associated documents. You're going to be contacted by law enforcement. Preston started gathering his equipment with shaking hands. I had no idea. The signature looked legitimate. I verified it against the notary seal, checked the date stamp. I have the power of attorney right here, he said, his voice rising with defensive panic. It looks exactly like your signature, sir. Whoever prepared this did excellent work. I've been appraising properties for 20 years, and this is professional-grade documentation. There it was. The admission that this was an amateur hour. Someone with skill had forged my signature. Someone who understood notary procedures and legal formatting well enough to fool a licensed professional. Preston's van pulled away 5 minutes later, leaving me standing in the driveway with Zachariah still on the line. Russell, Zachariah said, his tone shifting to something I hadn't heard in 20 years of banking relationship clinical alarm. We need you at the branch first thing tomorrow morning. This appraiser incident isn't isolated. What do you mean? Whoever forged that signature has attempted to add Lyle as co-owner on 3 of your accounts. The system flagged them automatically because the signature pressure analysis didn't match your biometric profile. But these attempts are sophisticated. We need to restructure your entire authentication grid before they try something we cannot catch. I looked at my house, the home Estelle and I had bought, when we were young and optimistic, when our son was still small enough to believe his parents could protect him from anything. Or 3 accounts, and they said. 3 separate attempts, Zachariah confirmed. All in the last 2 weeks. Russell, someone is building a systematic plan to take control of your assets. We need to shut every door before they find one we missed. I spent that night cataloging evidence and preparing for the morning bank meeting with Zachariah. But at 7:05 a.m., before I could leave for Philadelphia, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. The nursing home called at 7 in the morning, and I had never been a patient there, which meant someone had made me one without asking. Mr. Townsend, my name is Zandra Yates. The woman said, her voice pitched low, like she was calling from somewhere she shouldn't be. I work intake at Meadowbrook Care. I need to ask you a question that may sound strange. Are you aware that you have an admission file here? Oh. I set down my coffee cup with care that felt absurd given what she just said. No, I have never been a patient at your facility. What kind of file? A mandatory medical custody admission for cognitive evaluation and long-term placement. She paused and I heard a door close in the background. Filed by your son as designated medical guardian. The words didn't process at first, like hearing a diagnosis in a language you almost understand, but can't quite translate into meaning. "That's impossible," I said. "I don't have a medical guardian. I'm not incompetent." "I know." Xandra Yates, 42, had worked intake at Meadowbrook Care for 15 years and had seen enough fraudulent commitment paperwork to recognize when a family was warehousing an inconvenient elder, which was exactly why she risked her job to make the call. "That's why I'm calling you on my personal cell phone off the record. I've worked elder care for 15 years, Mr. Townsend. I recognize fraudulent admission paperwork when I see it. 40 years of balancing hospital budgets, and now someone had reduced me to a checkbox on an intake form for the confused and declining. What does the file say?" My voice sounded distant, clinical, like I was asking about someone else's medical records. "It contains a cognitive evaluation dated November 10th, supposedly conducted by a Dr. Raymond Gould. The evaluation claims you exhibit severe memory loss, impaired judgment, and inability to manage finances independently. It recommends immediate supervised care and assigns Lyle Townsend full medical and financial guardianship." November 10th. I'd been at the foundation office that day reviewing donor records with the accountant. I'd signed expense reports, discussed grant allocations, and driven myself home without incident. I had certainly not been evaluated by any doctor. "I've never met Dr. Raymond Gould," I said. "I wasn't evaluated on November 10th or any other date. I don't know who this doctor is." "I didn't think so." Papers rustled on her end of the line. "The evaluation claims you cannot recognize family members, have become hostile when questioned about spending, and attempted to withdraw large sums from your bank without explanation. Every single claim was a lie, but they were sophisticated lies, the kind that would sound plausible to a facility administrator trying to protect themselves from liability, the kind that would make a judge hesitate before rejecting a son's concern for his aging father. What kind of son manufactures dementia for his father to make stealing easier? I was never evaluated," I said again, needing to hear myself say it out loud. "Every single claim is a lie." "I know," Xandra said quietly. "The evaluation format is wrong. We stopped using that template 3 years ago. The scoring system is outdated, and the signature looks computer-generated, not hand-signed. That's why I'm calling you Mr. Townsend. This file is fake, and I think you need to know it exists before someone tries to execute it." "Execute it?" "The admission file auto-executes if the designated guardian signs the final intake authorization within 72 hours of filing. The file was submitted 54 hours ago." I looked at the clock on my desk, 7:18 a.m. "If your son signs the authorization form before 1 p.m. today," Xandra continued, "we are required by law to accept you as an involuntary patient. The evaluation gives us legal cover. The guardian signature gives us authority. At that point, you would be in our custody pending judicial review. Can you stop the admission if I contest it?" I was already pulling up Rowena's contact information on my computer, my mind racing through legal strategies. "Not without a court order," Xandra said, and I heard genuine regret in her voice. "Once the guardian signs, the facility is protected by the evaluation. Pennsylvania law assumes the family is acting in good faith. You would be committed first, then fight from inside. I've seen it take months, especially if the guardian claims the patient is hostile or delusional. Months locked in a nursing home, while Lyle gained legal control of my accounts, my property, the foundation. Months of mandatory medication to control my aggression. Months of having my every protest interpreted as proof of the very incompetence they had fabricated. "Mr. Townsend, I'm risking my job by calling you," Xandra said. "But I've watched families use our system to warehouse inconvenient parents, and I'm not going to be complicit in fraud. I'm scanning the documents now and sending them to the email address on file. You need to get a lawyer and file an emergency injunction before 1 p.m. "The email on file?" I frowned. "What email address do you have?" She read it back to me. My correct email, the one I'd used for decades, which meant whoever filed this paperwork had access to my personal information, knew enough about my life to make the fabrication convincing. "Thank you," I said. "Xandra, thank you for calling." "I have a father," she said simply. "He's 73. If someone tried this with him, I'd want someone to call." My computer chimed with an incoming email. The subject line read, "Meadowbrook Care, Urgent." I opened the attachment. There it was, the cognitive evaluation on official-looking letterhead, Dr. Raymond Gould's typed name at the bottom, with a digital signature that could have been copied from anywhere. The assessment read like a psychiatric obituary, declaring me mentally dead while my heart still beat. "Mr. Townsend," Xandra said, her voice dropping even lower. "If he shows up here with that signature before 1 p.m., I cannot stop him. The law protects the guardian, not the patient. You have 18 hours. I hung up and looked at the clock, 7:22 a.m. 18 hours to dismantle a legal trap designed to erase my autonomy, my assets, and my ability to fight back. 18 hours before my son could have me locked away like a piece of furniture he no longer wanted but couldn't quite throw away. Rowena filed the emergency injunction at 9:47 a.m., 3 hours before Lyle's deadline. By 2 p.m., I was sitting in a different kind of crisis, one measured in stolen dollars instead of stolen freedom. Numbers do not lie, which was why I had hired Thornton Hewitt to translate my son's betrayal into irrefutable mathematics. Thornton Hewitt, 55, had built a career unraveling Ponzi schemes and embezzlement rings across 3 states, and the moment he saw the Foundation's books, he recognized the classic pattern of a narcissist who believed his own performance made theft invisible. His downtown Philadelphia office was Spartan white walls, metal desk windows overlooking Market Street. Color-coded spreadsheets covered every surface, red for suspicious, yellow for questionable, green for clean. There wasn't much green. "Russell, what I'm about to show you is textbook embezzlement disguised as operational expenses," Thornton said, settling into his chair. "I've spent 3 days analyzing 5 years of records. Your son is either spectacularly incompetent or spectacularly arrogant." "Which is it?" "Arrogant. The patterns are too consistent to be accidental." Thornton's spreadsheets were archaeological layers, each row revealing how deep the corruption had been buried beneath charity galas and press releases. He turned his laptop screen toward me. "The Foundation received 847 individual donations over 3 years. 214 of them are fabricated." "Fabricated how?" "Donated and withdrawn within 72 hours. Same bank routing numbers. Perfectly rounded amounts, $5,000, $10,000, $25,000. Real donors give messy numbers. These donations exist only on paper to inflate the fundraising totals your son reports to the board. To make himself look successful." "Correct, but that's just performance. The actual theft is more sophisticated." He pulled a thick folder from his desk. "A vendor called Townsend Media Solutions has billed the Foundation $287,000 over 2 years. Marketing services, digital strategy, donor outreach. The name alone made my stomach turn. The company is registered to the exact address of Leona's personal PR firm, Apex Brand Communications," Thornton continued. "Townsend Media Solutions does not exist as a functional business. No employees, no office, no services rendered. It is a shell company." "How much is a human life worth when measured against your son's brand visibility metrics?" "Every invoice from Townsend Media Solutions," Thornton said, laying out documents like playing cards, "is followed within days by matching deposits into Leona's business account. The invoices are professionally formatted, but the work descriptions are deliberately vague. Strategic brand alignment, digital presence optimization." I picked up one invoice. It looked legitimate Foundation letterhead, proper formatting, Lyle's signature, but the service description was meaningless corporate jargon. $287,000 of patient care money went directly into your daughter-in-law's pocket over 24 months, I said. "Correct." Thornton's voice remained clinical, but I heard the anger beneath it. He pulled out a thinner file marked with a single red flag. "Russell, I need to show you the human cost." He slid a grant application across the desk. Handwritten medical history filled the margins in neat, desperate script. "Jennifer Calloway," Thornton said quietly. 34 years old, 2 children under 10. Stage 4 ovarian cancer. She applied for a treatment grant in August 2023 to cover experimental chemotherapy. Her application scored highest priority under Estelle's original criteria. I looked at the application. Jennifer's handwriting was careful, almost apologetic. She'd attached photos 2 small girls with gap-toothed smiles holding a sign that read, "We love you, Mommy." The denial letter cited budget constraints. Thornton continued, "Insufficient funds. The letter is dated August 18th. He pulled up another document. 3 days later, on August 21st, Lyle approved a $42,000 payment to Townsend Media Solutions for a promotional video campaign. The timeline hit me like physical force. Jennifer denied life-saving treatment because of budget constraints. 3 days later, Lyle gave Leona's shell company enough money to fund Jennifer's entire treatment. That same week, Thornton said, pulling up a news clip, "Your son appeared on local television celebrating the foundation's record-breaking fundraising quarter." I watched the video. Lyle in his expensive suit standing before the foundation logo, talking about Estelle's vision and lives being saved through generous donor support. He smiled his practiced smile and discussed expanding digital outreach, while Jennifer Calloway's oncologist was telling her family there were no more options. "She passed away in October," Thornton said. "The promotional video your daughter-in-law produced has 847 views on YouTube. 847 views, the same number as total donations, the universe highlighting the mathematics of waste." Thornton slid the application back. A paperclip shaped like a butterfly held Jennifer's medical records together. "At the bottom," he said. I looked. Someone had stamped "denied" in red ink. I recognized the stamp because I had bought it for Estelle when we founded the organization, back when we thought denial would be rare and only for cases that didn't meet medical criteria. She'd hated using it, said every stamp felt like failing someone who needed help. "Your son used that stamp 47 times in 2 years, Thornton said quietly. "I can prove every single denial coincided with a shell company payment to Leona's account. Every time he told a dying patient the foundation couldn't help them, he was funding his wife's business and his own publicity." I sat back, Jennifer Calloway's application still in my hands. 47 people, 47 families told there wasn't enough money, while Lyle and Leona siphoned patient care funds into luxury cars and promotional videos nobody watched. My son hadn't just stolen from the foundation. He'd killed people with paperwork. I left Thornton's office with Jennifer Calloway's application in my briefcase and a weight in my chest that felt like drowning on dry land. 47 people denied care so Lyle could fund his wife's vanity projects. I needed counsel that went beyond legal strategy, beyond forensic accounting. I needed to know if what I was planning was justice or just revenge dressed in a dead woman's instructions. Iona opened her front door before I could knock, as if she had been waiting 3 years for me to finally arrive, asking the right questions. "Russell," she said, pulling me into an embrace that smelled like the lavender sachets Estelle used to make. "I have been waiting for you to come. Estelle told me you would eventually." Iona Cruz, 65, had known Estelle Townsend since they were 7 years old in West Philadelphia. And when Estelle asked her to safeguard a final recording in the hospital, Iona understood she was being trusted with a weapon that would only be needed if everything went terribly wrong. Her row house in Fairmount was small, but meticulously kept filled with photos of their 60-year friendship. 2 girls in school uniforms, teenagers at prom, young mothers with babies, older women at charity events. Every stage of Estelle's life documented on Iona's walls like a museum to loyalty. "You know what Lyle has done," I said. It wasn't a question. "I saw him on the news last week talking about innovation and modernization." She knew he would use those exact words. Iona closed the door and locked at a gesture that felt significant. "The donor network has been talking, people asking where Estelle's name went, why the mission changed. I have been following it all." Iona and Estelle had been friends for 60 years, since elementary school in West Philadelphia, which meant Iona knew my wife's voice better than anyone still living. "Sit," Iona said, gesturing to the worn sofa. "There is something she made me promise to keep safe, something she recorded in the hospital during her last week." My hands went cold. "What kind of recording?" "The kind you make when you know your son is going to destroy what you built, and you want your husband to know you saw it coming." Iona disappeared down the hallway toward her bedroom. I sat in the quiet, surrounded by photos of Estelle's smile, and tried to prepare myself for whatever came next. But how do you prepare to hear a dead woman's voice predicting your living son's betrayal? Iona returned carrying a small digital audio recorder, the kind journalists used for interviews. She held it carefully, like it was both precious and dangerous. "She recorded this on October 14th, 2020, Iona said, sitting beside me. 8 days before she passed. She was very clear about when I should give it to you. The recorder had a label in Estelle's handwriting, for Russell, when he needs to know I saw it coming." Estelle said, "If the foundation is being used to make Lyle rich instead of helping patients, if you are being erased or silenced, then Russell needs to hear my voice," Iona continued. "She made me promise I would not let you hear this unless it was necessary. She did not want you grieving over suspicions if they never came true. What kind of mother records a message like this knowing her son might one day prove her worst fears true? They came true, I said quietly. I know. Iona placed the recorder in my hands. Press play when you are ready. I will be in the kitchen. She left me alone with my wife's final message. I stared at the device for a full minute before my thumb found the play button. The recording started with ambient hospital noise monitors, beeping distant voices in the hallway, the mechanical hiss of the IV pump. Then, Estelle's voice weakened by illness, but utterly clear in purpose. Russell, if you are hearing this, it means my worst fears came true. Lyle has put his ambition before the patient's. I closed my eyes. 3 years since I'd heard that voice, and it still felt like coming home. I have been watching him change, Estelle continued. He asked me last month how much the foundation brand is worth, not the endowment the brand, like we built a product to sell. I told him we are a charity, not a corporation. He looked at me like I was naive. A pause, labored breathing, the sound of someone gathering strength to continue. He resents you, Russell, not because you did anything wrong, but because you represent oversight. You ask questions, you check the numbers, you remember what this foundation was supposed to be. He sees you as an obstacle to his vision of success. Another pause, a cough wet and painful. Rowena and I built something into the trust, an anti-exploitation addendum. If Lyle uses the foundation for personal enrichment, if he denies care to patients while enriching himself, the clause activates. But it requires you to make it public. You have to stand up in front of the donors and the board and say what he has done. Estelle's voice broke slightly. I know what I'm asking you to do. I know it means destroying our son's reputation, maybe his freedom. But Russell, the patients have to come first. They always came first for us. They have to come first for you now. The recording quality shifted. She'd moved closer to the microphone. You will find a clause in the trust that Rowena and I built together. Use it only if they cross the line of basic humanity. If you are listening to this, they have crossed it. Protect the patients, not our son. I love you. Your stubborn accountant. The recording ended with the soft click of Estelle shutting off the device, but I could hear her labored breathing for 3 seconds after the sound of a woman fighting cancer while fighting to protect something bigger than herself. Iona returned from the kitchen, tears streaming down her face. She said you would know what to do when you were ready, Russell. She said you would know when they had crossed the line. I looked down at my briefcase where Jennifer Calloway's grant application lay beside the forensic audit proving 47 denials. They had not just crossed the line. They had burned it. Estelle had given me permission. The forensic audit had given me evidence. Now, I needed to understand the full scope of what Lyle had built on the foundation of her manipulated voice. I pressed play on the video file labeled final_cut and watched my son transform my wife into a liar. The video opened with sweeping drone footage of Pennsylvania Hospital at sunset, the kind of cinematography that cost thousands of dollars and signaled serious money behind the production. Soft piano music swelled as the title appeared, Passing the Torch, The Evolution of Compassionate Care. Estelle's face filled the screen, a photograph from 2018, her smile warm, her eyes kind. Then a transition to Lyle in the same hospital hallway, his hand on a patient's shoulder, his expression carefully composed into concerned empathy. The narration began with Estelle's voice and my chest tightened. The foundation must embrace the future with courage and vision. She'd never said that sentence, not those words in that order, but the voice was unmistakably hers. The cadence almost right, the tone close enough that anyone who didn't know her intimately would believe it was authentic. The video continued. More archival photos of Estelle at charity events, interspersed with modern footage of Lyle at ribbon cuttings and donor galas. Her voice continued, seemingly praising the evolution of care, the importance of innovation, the need for fresh leadership. I trust the next generation to carry this forward in ways I could never imagine. They had taken the voice that once read bedtime stories to our son and turned it into a marketing asset, one word at a time. The video reached its conclusion with a caption that appeared over a photo of Estelle and me at the foundation's opening ceremony. As co-founder Russell Townsend enters his well-deserved retirement, a new chapter begins. Well-deserved retirement, the natural challenges of aging, the subtle implication woven through every frame that I was old, tired, quietly stepping aside because my time had passed. I closed the final_cut file and opened the raw production folder Greer had provided. The first file was labeled audio_surgery_session_1. I clicked play. The footage showed Leona sitting beside a video editor in a professional studio, multiple monitors displaying audio waveforms and timeline sequences. Between them, a laptop showed dozens of archived files. Estelle's hospice recordings, patient testimony, videos, board meeting, minutes, speeches from fundraising events. "Pull that word from the hospice file," Leona said, pointing at the screen. "We need her saying innovation in a positive context." The editor scrolled through audio files, his cursor hovering over a recording dated October 2020, the final week of Estelle's life. He isolated a single word, innovation. On the timeline, it sat between treatment and protocols. Part of Estelle's discussion about experimental treatment innovation for terminal patients. The editor lifted the word out of its context and moved it to a new timeline. "And this splice works if we smooth the pitch transition," the editor said, adjusting waveforms with professional precision. "Nobody will notice the cut." "Perfect," Leona said. "Now find me Vision. Make it sound like she is talking about Lyle specifically, not patient care." At what point in the editing process did Leona realize she was erasing the woman who had welcomed her into this family? I watched them work for 12 minutes of footage, extracting words like a surgeon removing organs, future from a 2017 speech about future treatment options, leadership from her description of nursing leadership excellence, courage from a patient's courage facing terminal diagnosis. Word by word, they built sentences. Estelle had never spoken endorsements, she'd never made a legacy she'd never intended. The timestamp showed this session had lasted 4 hours. The folder contained 2 more sessions totaling 8 additional hours. 12 hours of meticulous audio manipulation to make a dead woman lie. I opened the third raw footage file labeled BTS_final_review. Lyle appeared on screen standing in the production studio with Leona and the editing team. They were watching a preview of the completed video on a large monitor. "And the dementia angle is perfect," Lyle said, laughing. "Donors expect cognitive decline at his age. Nobody questions it." My hands went cold. As long as we keep him away from live events, he cannot contradict our timeline. Leona added, making notes on her tablet. "The nursing home backup plan ensures that. If he tries to show up somewhere unexpected, we have documentation ready to file." "Smart," someone off camera said. Lyle walked closer to the monitor, showing Estelle's spliced image. "We will keep the old man away from live microphones. Mom's voice is all we need now." The casual contempt in his voice was worse than the fraud. He wasn't just stealing from the foundation or manipulating donors. He was enjoying it, performing cruelty with the same polished confidence he brought to charity galas. "When do we release this?" the editor asked. "Next week," Leona said, "coordinated with the donor appreciation breakfast. Russell won't be there. We already sent regrets on his behalf, citing health concerns. By the time he realizes what we've published, the narrative is set." Lyle nodded. "And if he tries to contradict it publicly, then the cognitive evaluation becomes evidence, not prevention," Leona said. "Either way, we control the story." The footage continued to, a moment after they had approved the final cut. Someone had brought champagne. Lyle and Leona stood in the empty studio, toasting with crystal glasses that caught the overhead lights. "To perfect narrative control," Leona said, raising her glass. Lyle turned toward the monitor, where Estelle's face still smiled from the paused video. He raised his glass to her image. "Yes, thanks, Mom," he said, his voice bright with satisfaction. "You are finally more useful than you ever were alive." I stopped the playback and sat in darkness, the laptop screen frozen on my son's smile. Greer had given me a weapon. Estelle's recording had given me permission. And now, Lyle had given me the final justification I needed. No more investigating. No more gathering evidence. No more wondering if I was being too harsh, too unforgiving, too willing to destroy my own son. He had already destroyed himself. I was just going to make sure everyone saw it. The decision was made the moment Lyle toasted Estelle's corpse. But the hardest part of strategy is not gathering the weapons, but deciding whether to use them, which is why I called Rowena at midnight instead of sleeping. Her face appeared on my laptop screen, sharply focused despite the late hour. Behind her, I could see the familiar law office shelves, the same books that had governed every legal decision Estelle and I had made for 40 years. "Russell," she said, "I assume this is not a social call. I have enough evidence to destroy him. I said my desk covered with files like a war room command center. The question is whether I should try to stop this privately first. Rowena's expression didn't change. Russell, private settlements work when both parties want resolution. Does Lyle want resolution, or does he want you eliminated? I pulled up Xandra's scanned nursing home documents on my screen and shared them through the encrypted call. The nursing home documents prove he wants me silenced permanently. Private negotiation gives him time to execute that plan. Show me everything else, Rowena said, pulling a legal pad into view. I methodically presented the arsenal. Thornton's forensic audit showing the shell company theft, the fabricated donations, the 47 denied patient grants. Jennifer Calloway's application with the butterfly paperclip and red denied stamp. The raw production footage of Lyle mocking me, calling me senile, laughing about keeping the old man away from microphones. Estelle's audio recording, granting explicit permission to use the trust clause. The fraudulent cognitive evaluation. Evidence does not care about blood, which was why Rowena could analyze my son's fraud with the same clinical detachment she would apply to any stranger's crime. She took notes in the shorthand I'd seen her use for decades, her pen moving steadily across the legal pad. When I finished, she set down the pen and looked directly into the camera. "You have two strategic paths," she said. "I need you to understand both before you choose." I nodded. Path 1, you confront Lyle privately with this evidence and offer settlement terms. Full restitution resignation from the foundation agreement not to pursue guardianship. The leverage is threat of public exposure and criminal prosecution. And the risks? If you confront him privately, he will know you have evidence and will move to neutralize you before you can deploy it. He will transfer remaining liquid assets beyond recovery, destroy documents we have not yet secured, and accelerate the nursing home commitment using emergency psychiatric hold procedures that are harder to block than standard admissions. She paused, making sure I absorbed this. Path 2, strategic silence until the gala. You avoid all contact with Lyle and Leona, letting them interpret your withdrawal as weakness or decline. Meanwhile, we quietly fortify every legal protection, emergency medical directives, enhanced financial authentication, pre-signed court documents. Then at the gala, in front of major donors and media, you present the evidence. Lyle commits additional fraud in public. The fabricated letter, the manipulated video, claims about your incompetence all before witnesses who matter. If I stay silent, he will keep escalating, I said. The press conference, the fake donations, potentially the nursing home attempt. Yes, Rowena said. But every escalation creates more evidence and more witnesses. Let him build his own gallows while we quietly remove every board he plans to stand on. What kind of father chooses his wife's legacy over his son's future, and what kind of son forces that choice? The gala is in 12 days, I said. Can we lock down my medical and financial access by morning to see seasons? I can have documents filed by 9 a.m. Emergency medical directives specifying that only I and Zachariah Whitfield are authorized medical representatives. Any guardianship filing will trigger automatic contest with pre-submitted competency evaluations from 3 independent physicians. Enhanced power of attorney superseding any documents Lyle might have forged. Do it, I said. Rowena's pen moved across the legal pad, creating a tactical timeline. You will need to avoid all direct contact with Lyle and Leona. No phone calls, no emails, no responses to messages. If they show up at your home, do not engage. Every interaction gives them opportunity to claim confusion, hostility, or incompetence. They will interpret silence as surrender. Good. Let them celebrate prematurely. Arrogance makes people careless. She looked up from her notes, and her expression shifted into something I'd rarely seen from her personal concern rather than professional assessment. Russell, you need to understand what you are choosing. If you execute this plan at the gala, the public humiliation and legal consequences will destroy any possibility of father-son reconciliation. Private settlements allow for face-saving narratives, quiet resignations, family therapy, eventual forgiveness. Public exposure leaves no path back. I looked past her video window to the wall where Estelle's photo hung beside the Foundation's original charter. Her handwriting was still visible in the mission statement, the ink faded, but the words clear, serve the patients, not the donors. My son had inverted that principle and made himself rich doing it. 47 people denied care. Jennifer Calloway's children, without their mother. Estelle's voice carved into corporate propaganda. a nursing home file with my name on it, waiting to erase my autonomy and my ability to fight back. If you end this at the Gala, Rowena continued, her voice heavy with 40 years of practicing law, you must accept you might lose your son forever. Public exposure is a door that only swings one direction. Are you prepared for that consequence? The question hung in the digital space between us. I thought about Lyle as a child, the boy who'd brought me his math homework, who'd cried when his goldfish died, who'd told me he wanted to be a doctor, like his mother. That child was gone, replaced by a man who toasted the grave while robbing the dying. Proceed with the documents, I said. Let him escalate. I will see him at the Gala. Rowena held my gaze through the screen, making sure I understood the weight of what I'd just chosen. I will have everything filed by morning, she said quietly. The silence begins now. The silence lasted 4 days before Lyle made his next move, but I made mine first. We had 4 hours before the 72-hour window closed, and Lyle could legally commit me to institutional care, which meant Rowena and I were racing the kind of clock I had spent 40 years avoiding. Meadowbrook. Care's administrative office smelled like industrial disinfectant, and the particular sadness that comes from warehousing people whose families have decided they're too inconvenient to keep. Monica Frazier, the facility's administrative director, had approved hundreds of family-initiated admissions over 20 years, and never imagined one would be a sophisticated fraud designed to warehouse a competent elder against his will. She sat across from us in a conference room decorated with inspirational posters about dignity and compassion, the admission file open on the table between us. Mr. Townsend, she said with practiced sympathy, I understand this is difficult, but the file was properly submitted by your designated medical guardian with supporting documentation from a licensed physician. Ms. Frazier, I am here to formally contest the admission file opened in my name, I said, keeping my voice level, despite the rage burning beneath it. I have never been evaluated by Dr. Raymond Gould, and I am not cognitively impaired. Fighting for the right to remain free in my own home, at 68, felt like a grotesque inversion of everything I thought fatherhood meant. Monica's expression remained professionally neutral. The designated guardian has legal authority to... The designated guardian has no legal authority, Rowena interrupted, sliding a thick folder across the table. I am revoking all prior powers of attorney and presenting independent psychiatric clearance dated this morning. The door opened. Xandra Yates entered carrying her own folder, her expression a mixture of vindication and anger. Ms. Frazier, I need to show you something I should have brought to your attention when this file arrived, Xandra said, opening the folder to reveal the intake documents. The evaluation format is outdated, the signature appears computer-generated, and I ran the IP trace you should have requested. The submission originated from the Estelle Townsend Cancer Care Foundation office, not from any medical facility. Monica's professional composure cracked. You ran an IP trace without authorization. I ran an IP trace to protect this facility from complicity in elder fraud, Xandra said quietly, which is exactly what this is. Rowena pulled 3 documents from her briefcase, each one stamped with county clerk filing seals. These documents were filed with the court at 8:15 this morning, she said, arranging them in front of Monica like evidence at trial. First, notice of contestation declaring all admission paperwork fraudulent. Second, revocation of all prior powers of attorney, naming only myself and Zachariah Whitfield of Philadelphia Trust as Russell Townsend's authorized representatives. Third, preemptive guardianship contest backed by independent psychiatric evaluation. She pulled out a medical report with Pennsylvania Hospital letterhead. The psychiatric evaluation was conducted by Dr. Eleanor Marsh, former chief of geriatric psychiatry at Pennsylvania Hospital. Her credentials exceed Dr. Gould's significantly. Dr. Eleanor Marsh had evaluated me at 6 a.m. that morning and certified me as cognitively sharp enough to manage a hospital system, let alone my own finances. When did the medical system designed to protect vulnerable elders become a tool for their children to disappear them? Dr. Marsh's evaluation includes cognitive function testing, memory assessment, and financial competency verification, Rowena continued. Russell Townsend scored in the 97th percentile for his age group. He can recite 40 years of hospital financial data from memory. He is not impaired, and any claim to the contrary is defamatory. Monica read through the evaluation, her face growing pale. If Lyle Townsend attempts to sign that authorization, Rowena said, her voice dropping into the tone that had won court cases for 4 decades. Meadowbrook faces immediate lawsuit for elder abuse and medical fraud conspiracy. Any attempt to admit Mr. Townsend now constitutes kidnapping, not medical care. The room went silent, except for the hum of fluorescent lights overhead. The court filing requires a hearing before any guardianship can proceed, Rowena added. That hearing takes a minimum of 30 days to schedule. Your 72-hour window is legally void. Monica closed the admission file with shaking hands. Mr. Townsend, I apologize. If I had known— You should have known, Xandra said. The intake documents had red flags I identified within 10 minutes. You approved them because a family member filed them, and you assumed good faith. I need copies of everything in that file, Rowena said. Certified copies for legal proceedings. Monica nodded, already reaching for her phone to call the records department. I'll have them prepared immediately, and I'm flagging this file as contested fraud. If anyone from the Townsend family contacts us, we refer them to legal counsel. Xandra handed Rowena a USB drive. Digital trail showing the file submission origin timestamps and the IP address trace to the foundation office. Everything you need to prove premeditation. Ms. Yates, thank you for protecting me, I said, standing to shake her hand. You saved my autonomy, possibly my life. Her eyes were bright with unshed tears. I have a father, she said simply. Someone needed to call. Rowena and I walked out of Meadowbrook Care into December sunlight that felt like freedom. The nursing home trap was neutralized, the legal protections locked into place, the evidence secured. But Rowena's expression was grim as we reached her car. They know they lost the medical angle, Russell, she said, unlocking the doors. Plan B will be total character assassination. Whatever Lyle has planned, it will be loud and public. Let him try, I said, settling into the passenger seat. I have 5 days to prepare, and he has no idea what I know. Rowena's phone buzzed before she could start the engine. She glanced at the screen, then went very still. What? She turned the phone toward me, showing a news alert from Philadelphia's NBC affiliate. A foundation director announces cancer. Hope Center honors retiring co-founder's legacy gift. Below the headline, press conference scheduled for 12 p.m. today at foundation headquarters. I stared at the words. Legacy gift, retiring co-founder. I have made no gift, I said quietly. I know, Rowena said, her jaw tight. Which means Lyle is about to publicly claim your assets while you are still alive to watch him do it. Rowena drove us directly from Meadowbrook Care to her law office without discussion. We both knew what came next. The vault door was 3 inches of steel, designed to protect documents from fire, flood, and theft. But nothing could protect what I was about to sign from the weight of its consequences. Rowena's law office occupied the ground floor of the converted brownstone, but beneath it lay something few clients ever saw. A climate-controlled vault built to archive original trust documents for her most sensitive estates. The temperature held steady at 65 degrees, the humidity controlled to preserve paper and ink for decades. She unlocked the vault door with a key that hung on a chain around her neck, a second key required from a wall safe, and a final numerical code entered into a keypad. The door swung open with the pneumatic hiss of airtight seals releasing. Estelle created this addendum in August 2020. Rowena said, walking to a fireproof filing cabinet labeled Townsend Estate, Primary Documents. 2 months before she passed, she told me it was insurance against the scenario we are now living. She pulled a sealed folder from the cabinet, its envelope marked in Estelle's precise handwriting, Anti-Exploitation Protocol, to be activated only upon determination of criminal foundation abuse. The envelope has remained sealed since I filed it with the trust. Rowena continued, her fingers tracing Estelle's writing. Nobody except you, me, and Estelle knew it existed. Estelle had written this clause between the same chemotherapy sessions where she recorded her final warnings, building legal fortresses while her body failed. Rowena broke the seal and removed the document. It was 5 pages of dense legal language, but certain phrases jumped out in bold type: immediate termination of authority, forfeiture of inheritance rights, mandatory restitution, self-executing upon formal declaration. She was very specific about the activation conditions. Rowena said, laying the pages on a steel table bolted to the vault floor. The clause activates the moment you make a formal declaration before the foundation board or major financial benefactors with evidence of exploitation. I read through the first page. The language was surgical, leaving no room for interpretation or appeal. If any trustee, director, or officer of the Estelle Townsend Cancer Care Foundation is proven to have utilized the organization's legal identity, financial assets, or institutional reputation for personal debt liquidation, private commercial gain, or family wealth accumulation, said party's executive authority terminates immediately upon formal declaration by the surviving co-founder before the foundation's governing board or assembled major benefactors. Lyle's authority as foundation director terminates instantly, Rowena explained. No vote required, no appeals process, no grace period. The proof is presented, the declaration is made, and he's removed. And the inheritance, I asked, though I already knew. His inheritance from your estate and Estelle's trust is forfeited automatically. The foundation itself is protected from his debts or any claims he might make. Estelle designed this to ensure that if the exploitation was proven, the exploiter could never benefit from the family assets that enabled the charity in the first place. What does it mean to sign a document that will destroy your son using the pen his mother once used to build his inheritance? The clause is self-executing. Rowena continued, turning to page 3 where the mechanics were detailed. Once you make the public declaration with supporting evidence, the legal framework activates automatically. No court hearing, no prolonged litigation. Pennsylvania trust law allows for self-executing provisions when the triggering conditions are objectively verifiable. And the evidence threshold? Thornton's forensic audit meets it. The shell company payments, the fabricated donations, the patient grant, denials any one of those proves exploitation. All three together is overwhelming. Rowena pulled a separate document from the folder, activation agreement. This is the point of no return, Russell, she said, placing it before me. Once you sign, the mechanism is live. Even if you walk away from the Gala, this clause remains active in the trust. It cannot be withdrawn, amended, or voided. Estelle designed it that way specifically to prevent you from backing down under pressure. I looked at the activation agreement. It required my signature, the date, and a witness signature from Rowena. If you make that declaration in front of Harlan Riddle and the major donors with Thornton's evidence, Rowena said quietly, Lyle loses everything that same moment. His position, his authority, his inheritance. The foundation he tried to steal becomes permanently beyond his reach. But he keeps his freedom, I said. This doesn't trigger criminal prosecution. No, that's separate. The addendum protects the foundation and terminates his control. What you do about criminal charges is a different decision. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out Estelle's vintage fountain pen, the one she'd used to sign the foundation's original charter 8 years ago. The pen that had created the organization Lyle was now destroying. Your wife built this weapon 3 years ago, knowing you might need it, Rowena said. Now you have to decide whether to fire it. I uncapped the pen. The nib was still good, the ink cartridge I'd replaced last year still full. Estelle's voice echoed in my memory from the recording Iona had given me. Use it only if they cross the line of basic humanity. If you are listening to this, they have crossed it. 47 patients denied care. Jennifer Calloway dead, while Lyle celebrated on television. My wife's voice cut into propaganda, a nursing home file with my name on it. I signed my name on the activation agreement, the ink flowing dark and permanent across the signature line. Rowena witnessed below my signature, adding the date and her notary seal. Once you sign, the mechanism is live, she had said. It was live now. I capped Estelle's fountain pen and set it beside the signed activation papers, my signature still wet on documents that would erase our son from the foundation his mother had built for dying strangers. Rowena placed the originals back in the fireproof cabinet, sealing them in an archival envelope. The vault door closed with a pneumatic hiss that sounded like a casket sealing. The trap was armed. 4 days until the Gala, and Lyle had no idea that every lie he told from this moment forward was loading the gun I would fire in front of everyone who mattered. The trap was armed. Now I had to watch my son load it. My son stood before a wall of cameras and foundation banners, preparing to announce my generosity with assets I had never agreed to donate. The press conference live-streamed from the foundation headquarters at 11 a.m. I watched from my study, Rowena beside me, taking notes on every claim Lyle made, building the documentation we'd need in 2 days. Lyle looked presidential behind the podium, his suit perfectly tailored, his smile, warm and practiced. Leona stood to his left, her expression the picture of supportive partnership. Behind them, a projection screen showed architectural renderings of a modern facility labeled Cancer Hope Center. Today, we announce the Cancer Hope Center. Lyle began, his voice carrying the rehearsed cadence of someone who'd practiced this speech. Made possible by my father's extraordinary commitment to this mission. Watching your son lie fluently on camera is a special kind of grief, the death of the child you thought you raised, replacing itself with a stranger who shares his face. Russell Townsend has chosen to dedicate his primary estate to ensure cancer patients receive care for generations to come, Lyle continued. This voluntary donation represents the kind of multi-generational commitment that defines true philanthropy. The assembled reporters scribbled notes. Several donors in the front row nodded approvingly. This is what legacy looks like, Lyle said, gesturing to the architectural renderings, carrying forward the vision my mother and father built together. The Cancer Hope Center will provide comprehensive support services, expanded treatment access, and research partnerships that my parents could only dream of when they started this foundation. Applause filled the conference room. Someone asked about the timeline for construction. Lyle answered smoothly, talking about donor matching campaigns and phased development. Not once did he mention that I wasn't present. Not once did he acknowledge that I had donated nothing authorized, nothing agreed to nothing. Rowena's pen moved steadily across her legal pad. Documented fraud, she murmured. Broadcast to media witnesses. Time-stamped video evidence. The press conference ended with Lyle thanking the donors for their continued trust and promising updates at the annual Gala in 2 days. The reporters filed out, already drafting their stories about the heartwarming family legacy. Within an hour, Leona released the Passing the Torch video across all Foundation social media platforms. I watched it spread like a virus through Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. The polished production I'd seen in Greer's leaked files, now public, now official, now positioning itself as the Foundation's authorized narrative. Estelle's spliced voice blessing innovation. Lyle with patience. His hand on shoulders, his expression carefully composed. The subtle captions, as co-founder Russell Townsend enters his well-deserved retirement, navigating the natural challenges of aging with grace. The comments flooded in within minutes. What a gracious son, honoring his father's legacy while protecting him from the stress of leadership. This is how you handle aging parents with dignity. Beautiful transition of power. Lyle Townsend is doing it right, respecting the past while building the future. Leona's official post appeared at the top of the Foundation page, grateful to carry forward Estelle and Russell's vision as they both rest in the peace they have earned. They both rest, as if I were already dead, already gone, already irrelevant to the organization I'd co-founded. Do you let the lie stand to protect your wife's legacy, or do you burn everything to the ground to save her actual mission? I closed the laptop and looked at Rowena. They think they've won, she said quietly. But let them, I said, for 2 more days. But I couldn't stay in my study watching the narrative solidify. I needed to remember why this mattered beyond fraud and theft and family betrayal. I drove to Pennsylvania Hospital. Before I show you the exact patient case that changed everything, if you're still with me, comment A, if I should expose it all, or B, if protecting the Foundation matters more. Add 1 reason in 5 to 10 words. Quick note, what follows includes recreated details for emotional impact, but the message is what stays with you. The hospice wing occupied the 3rd floor, painted in soothing blues and grays, designed to make death feel less clinical. Sarah Brennan had coordinated patient care here for 12 years and kept every denied grant application in a locked file because she believed someone should remember the names of patients the system failed. She met me in the patient records room, her expression somber. Mr. Townsend, she said, I saw the press conference. I needed to show you something. She pulled a file from her locked cabinet. Jennifer Calloway's name was typed on the tab. 34 years old, mother of 2, Sarah said, opening the file. Stage 4 ovarian cancer. She applied for a Foundation grant in August to cover experimental chemotherapy not covered by insurance. She showed me the application. Jennifer's handwriting was careful, her medical history detailed. At the bottom of the assessment page, someone had checked the highest priority box under the original grant criteria Estelle had designed. Jennifer's application scored highest priority under the original criteria, Sarah said. Stage 4, young children. Experimental treatment showing promise in clinical trials. She turned to the next page. The denial letter dated August 18th. Insufficient funds in treatment allocation budget. Sarah read. The denial letter said budget constraints. 3 days later, the foundation approved a $42,000 video production budget. The same video, now celebrating on social media. The same promotional material, showing Lyle with patients talking about the foundation's commitment to care. Jennifer passed away in October, Sarah said quietly. 3 weeks before that video was released, celebrating record fundraising. She pulled out a photograph, edges worn from being handled. 2 young girls, maybe 7 and 9, holding a handmade sign, "Thank you for trying." Her husband asked me to thank whoever approved the application attempt. Sarah said, her voice breaking slightly. He still thinks someone tried to help. He doesn't know the application was denied, so the foundation could pay for publicity. I took the photograph, my hands shaking. Jennifer Calloway, 2 children who would grow up without their mother. A grant denied, not because there wasn't money, but because Lyle needed better branding. "Are you all right?" Sarah asked. "Do you need to sit down?" I stood in the hospice hallway, holding Jennifer Calloway's photo, her children's faces looking up at me with gratitude for help that never came because my son needed better publicity. "I am not going to save my name, Sarah," I said, hearing the truth crystallize as I spoke it. "I am not even saving my wife's foundation. I am saving the patients my son is treating like budget line items." The gala was 2 days away, and Lyle had just given me the final reason I needed to destroy him without mercy. 2 days became, 1 day became hours. The moral certainty I'd found in the hospice hallway now required translation into tactical precision. Planning your son's public destruction requires the same clinical precision I once used to balance hospital budgets, except spreadsheets never asked me if I was certain. At 8 p.m., exactly 24 hours before the gala doors would open, I initiated the encrypted video conference. 4 windows appeared, Rowena in her law office, Thornton in his workspace, and Harlan Riddle 60, who had built a pharmaceutical empire worth $800 million by trusting engineering precision over charismatic promises, which was exactly why the foundation's vague expense reports had been triggering his fraud detectors for 6 months. "The final coordination," Rowena said. "Everyone confirms materials and positioning." Thornton went first. "The forensic presentation is loaded on 3 backup drives. Shell company transactions, patient denials, circular cash flows, all time-stamped and verified. I can project to any screen in the ballroom within 30 seconds. Legal documents," Rowena said, holding up a sealed folder. "I have the anti-exploitation addendum, the activation papers Russell signed, and the instant termination documents ready for legal execution. We were building a mousetrap out of legal documents and forensic spreadsheets, except the mouse was my son, and the cheese was his own greed." "And I control the donor recognition segment," Harlan said. "I can pivot to unscripted questions whenever you signal." "Let's walk through the sequence," Rowena said. "Lyle's keynote is scheduled for 7:30 p.m. He'll claim Russell's estate donation, celebrate the foundation's growth." "I let him finish," Harlan said. "Let him commit fully to the narrative. Then I take the microphone for what appears to be a spontaneous question." "Question 1, Thornton prompted. "I ask for verification of the real estate title transfer. Specific property address transfer, date recording office. Lyle will say it's being processed through Russell's attorney. That's lie number 1 on camera in front of 300 donors. Question 2, I ask for confirmation of cash reserves cited in the press release. Lyle will reference the numbers Leona announced. Thornton, you can prove those are inflated sea stars." "Immediately," Thornton confirmed. "I have real bank statements and the fabricated donation log side by side. The difference is 214 fake transactions." "Question 3 is the entrance cue," Harlan said. "I ask for the specific dollar amount of Russell's estate donation. When Lyle commits to a number on camera, Russell, that's when you walk in. How many times do you rehearse the exact moment you will walk into a room and end your relationship with your only child?" "I enter from the main doors," I said. "Everyone sees me. Everyone realizes Lyle has been claiming my assets while I'm still alive to contradict him." "Then I take the microphone," Rowena said. "I identify myself as Russell's estate attorney and declare that no transfer has been authorized, no donation made, and that the financial claims are fraudulent. That formal declaration triggers the anti-exploitation addendum. And I project the forensic evidence," Thornton added. "The shell company payments, the denied patient grants, Jennifer Calloway's application next to the video production invoice. All the numbers Lyle can't explain. The sequence was choreographed like surgery, each step removing Lyle's ability to deflect or escape. Russell, Harlan said, his tone shifting. I need you to understand why I'm doing this. I have been watching the expense reports for 6 months. Vague line items, rounded numbers, vendors I could not verify. As the Foundation's largest pharmaceutical donor, I have a fiduciary duty to ensure our contributions reach patients. You've been suspicious, I said. I've been waiting for someone to provide concrete evidence, Harlan confirmed. Your attorney contacted me 3 weeks ago. Since then, I've been positioning myself to demand transparency at exactly the right moment. Tomorrow night is that moment. Rowena cleared her throat. Contingencies. If Lyle refuses to answer, I threaten to pull all future pharmaceutical donations, Harlan said. Not just personal contributions, but corporate matching and research partnerships. Roughly $2.3 million annually. Lyle will have to respond or watch his funding collapse in real time. If Leona intervenes, Thornton asked, security has been instructed to allow Russell and his team full access as donor representatives, Rowena said. Harlan's positioning provides legal cover. We're not protesters, we're stakeholders demanding financial transparency. Rowena looked directly into her camera, her expression grave. Russell, I need to say this one final time. If you walk into that ballroom and trigger this trap, you are choosing Estelle's mission over your relationship with Lyle. That choice is permanent. There will be no private apology, no quiet reconciliation, no family therapy that puts this back together. I understand. Once you walk down that aisle in front of 300 donors and media cameras, the public humiliation becomes irreversible. Your son will never forgive you. Your granddaughter will witness her father's destruction. The Foundation will survive, the patients will be protected, but your family will be shattered. She paused. Once you walk down that aisle, there is no turning back from what you are about to do to your son. The silence lasted 5 seconds. I know, I said quietly. Jennifer Calloway's children lost their mother because my son needed a promotional video. 47 patients were denied care, so Leona could bill the Foundation for services never rendered. I'm not turning back. Rowena nodded slowly. Then we proceed. The video conference ended at 9:47 p.m., with synchronized confirmations, each team member signing off with clinical acknowledgement of their role. I sat alone in my study, staring at the clock, 22 hours and 13 minutes, until the gala doors opened, until Lyle took the stage believing he had won, until I walked down that center aisle and activated the trap Estelle had built 3 years ago for exactly this betrayal. Rowena's final words echoed in the silence, there is no turning back. I had stopped looking for a way back the moment I held Jennifer Calloway's photo. 22 hours became 2 hours became now. I sat in my car across from the Rittenhouse Hotel, watching my son's triumph on a tablet screen, waiting for the precise mathematical moment when his lies would become evidence. The live stream showed the grand ballroom in full glory. 300 donors in evening wear, filled tables dressed in Foundation colors, deep purple and silver. Estelle's choices from 8 years ago. Crystal chandeliers caught the light from massive LED screens positioned on either side of the stage. Local media cameras lined the back wall, ready to broadcast what they thought would be a heartwarming story of family philanthropy. Leona took the stage first, her gown designer, perfect her smile calibrated between warmth and authority. Tonight we honor the vision of Estelle and Russell Townsend. She began, her voice carrying that practiced sincerity she'd perfected while celebrating the next chapter of hope they made possible. Applause rippled through the ballroom. I watched through the tablet screen from 50 yards away, parked where I could see both the hotel entrance and the live stream simultaneously. The Estelle Townsend Cancer Care Foundation has always been about one thing, Leona continued. Transforming lives through innovation and compassion. The LED screens lit up with the Passing the Torch video. The polished production I'd watched Greer leak now, official now, public now, weaponized. Watching your son weaponize your dead wife's voice while 300 people applaud feels like drowning in a room where everyone else is breathing fine. Estelle's spliced audio filled the ballroom speakers, her voice saying words she'd never spoken in sentences she'd never constructed. The future belongs to those with courage to imagine what we cannot yet see. The audience sat in rapt silence. Several donors leaned forward, visibly moved. On-screen archival photos of Estelle transitioned seamlessly into footage of Lyle with patience his hand on shoulders, his expression composed into practiced empathy. The video ended to sustained applause. Leona stepped aside, gesturing to the wings. "Please welcome our foundation director, Lyle Townsend." My son walked onto the stage to a standing ovation. He positioned himself before a massive backdrop featuring Estelle's photo. The same image from her final public appearance, her smile warm, despite the illness already ravaging her body. The symbolism was perfect, the manipulation complete. My mother built this foundation during her darkest hours. Lyle began, his voice carrying genuine emotion I knew was real, just aimed at the wrong target. Turning her suffering into salvation for others. That is the legacy I carry. He paused, letting the weight of that statement settle over the room. My father dedicated 40 years to this mission. He continued, and I heard the subtle shift in his tone, reverence mixed with gentle concern. He deserves the peace and quiet he has earned, knowing his work continues in capable hands. The audience nodded, sympathetic murmurs rippled through the tables. Lyle was painting me as the beloved elder statesman gracefully stepping aside, too tired to continue, too fragile to question. Lyle was conducting a symphony of deception, every note perfectly timed, every crescendo calibrated to extract maximum emotion from an audience that had no idea they were watching fraud set to music. I made my mother a promise in her final days. Lyle said, his voice breaking just enough to sound authentic. Tonight I fulfill that promise by ensuring her foundation reaches heights she never dreamed possible. He gestured to the LED screens. Architectural renderings appeared, sleek buildings, modern treatment rooms, patient housing with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking gardens. Tonight I announced the Cancer Hope Center. Lyle said, his voice rising with practiced passion. A $15 million expansion that will transform how we serve patients in crisis. The renderings cycled through treatment facilities equipped with cutting-edge technology, research labs, family counseling spaces, a meditation garden labeled Estelle's Garden of Hope. In this vision, Lyle continued, building to his climax, is anchored by my father's extraordinary commitment. I felt my hands tighten on the steering wheel. The voluntary dedication of his primary estate, valued at $1.8 million, to ensure this work continues for generations. The ballroom erupted. Donors rose to their feet, applause thundering through the speakers. Camera flashes lit the room like lightning. "This is legacy," Lyle shouted over the applause, his arms spread wide. "This is what it means to serve something greater than ourselves. Thank you, Dad, for showing us the way." The ovation swelled. I watched donors wiping tears, board members embracing media cameras, capturing every second of what they thought was philanthropic greatness. Lyle stood center stage, bathed in spotlight, accepting congratulations from Leona, who joined him, both of them smiling at the crowd like royalty receiving tribute. He had just publicly claimed $1.8 million of my assets, on camera, before 300 witnesses, with specific dollar amounts that could be verified, contested, and used as evidence of fraud. In the front row, Harlan Riddle sat motionless, his expression unreadable, waiting. The ovation continued. 30 seconds, 40 seconds, 47 seconds of sustained applause for a lie so perfectly told that no one in that room suspected they were celebrating theft. My phone buzzed. Text from Harlan. He just committed on camera. 1.8 million voluntary estate dedication. You are clear to enter. I looked through the car window at the Rittenhouse Hotel entrance. Security guards checking credentials at the door. Red carpet leading from the street to the lobby. Beyond that, the ballroom where my son was still accepting congratulations, still basking in fraudulent glory, still believing he had won. I opened the car door. December cold hit my face, sharp and clarifying. Across the parking area, Rowena and Thornton waited at the side entrance, both carrying leather briefcases that held 3 years of evidence, 47 denied patient grants, and the legal documents that would terminate my son's authority the moment I spoke the words Estelle had prepared for me to say. I began walking toward the hotel, toward the moment I would destroy my son, toward the trap Estelle had built that Lyle had loaded, that I was about to spring in front of everyone who mattered. The entrance doors opened as I approached. Security recognized me. They'd seen me at these events for 8 years and stepped aside without checking credentials. Inside the lobby, I could hear the muffled sound of continued applause from the ballroom. Rowena appeared at my elbow, ready. Thornton on my other side, his briefcase containing the forensic presentation that would turn Lyle's triumph into public humiliation. "Ready," I said. We walked toward the ballroom doors. The ballroom doors closed behind us with a soft pneumatic hiss, sealing us inside the moment we'd choreographed for weeks. Harlan Riddle stood up in the front row, while the applause still echoed and the room fell silent, because when an $800 million donor stands, everyone listens. I remained at the back of the ballroom, Rowena and Thornton beside me, watching Harlan execute the sequence we'd rehearsed. "Lyle." Harlan said, his voice carrying the authority of boardrooms and billion-dollar decisions. "Congratulations on this ambitious vision. I have 3 questions regarding the financial foundation of this expansion." The ballroom's celebratory energy shifted instantly. Donors sat up straighter. Board members leaned forward. This wasn't applause time anymore. This was accountability time. Lyle's smile held, but I saw the micro-tension in his shoulders. "Of course, Harlan. Happy to address any concerns." "First," Harlan said, pulling a small notebook from his jacket pocket, with the precision of someone who documented everything, "can you provide the official title transfer documentation showing Russell Townsend's executed signature on the $1.8 million estate dedication?" Murmurs rippled through the crowd. This wasn't a softball question about mission or vision. This was asking for proof. Harlan's questions were scalpels, each one designed to extract a specific lie that Thornton's spreadsheets would dissect in front of everyone who mattered. "The title transfer is being processed through our family attorney as we speak," Lyle said smoothly. "It will be public record within 2 to 3 weeks. These complex estate dedications require proper legal documentation." Harlan made a note. "Second question, the press release cited foundation cash reserves of $3.2 million. Can you verify that figure includes only confirmed donations, not pledges or future projections?" Leona shifted on the side stage, her expression carefully neutral, but her hands clasped too tightly. "The $3.2 million reserve is accurate per our Q3 audit," Lyle said with absolute confidence. "Every dollar is verified and allocated to patient care and operational excellence. Our auditors can confirm those numbers." Another note in Harlan's book. "Final question. Your quarterly expense reports show $287,000 paid to Townsend Media Solutions over 2 years. Can you provide detailed accounting for services rendered by this vendor?" The temperature in the room dropped. Several major donors exchanged glances. That was a forensic accounting question, disguised as routine inquiry. Lyle didn't hesitate. "Townsend Media Solutions has been instrumental in our 40% donor growth over 2 years. They handle our digital presence, strategic communications, and donor acquisition campaigns. The ROI justifies every dollar invested." He looked directly at Harlan, meeting the challenge with the confidence of someone who believed his own performance. "Any organization serious about modern fundraising invests in professional marketing." Lyle continued. "We're not running a charity on outdated methods. We're building sustainable impact." A few donors nodded. It sounded reasonable. It sounded like exactly what a forward-thinking foundation director should say. Harlan closed his notebook. My son looked directly at me across 300 people and tried to dismiss me like I was the interruption, not the man he had just robbed on live camera. "Those are interesting answers, thought Lyle." Harlan said, his tone shifting from inquiry to something harder. "Let us ask the actual legal title holder of the estate in question." He turned toward the main entrance. "He has just arrived." The ballroom's attention pivoted like a spotlight, swinging to a new actor. Heads turned. Whispers started before the doors even opened. The double doors swung wide. I walked through, flanked by Rowena Sinclair, carrying 3 legal binders, and Thornton Hewitt, with his laptop already displaying forensic evidence files. The crowd recognized me. How could they not? They'd just watched me in the Passing the Torch video, portrayed as the beloved co-founder, gracefully retiring into well-deserved rest, too tired to continue, too old to question. But the man walking down the center aisle wasn't tired. I was sharp-eyed, purposeful, and accompanied by attorneys carrying the kind of leather binders that meant serious legal action. "Is that Russell Townsend?" someone whispered loud enough to carry. I thought he was retired. "Why does he have lawyers with him?" I kept walking my pace, measured each step deliberate. Rowena on my left, Thornton on my right, both of them projecting the professional gravity of people about to deliver evidence that would end careers. Lyle's face drained of color. "Dad, he said into the microphone, his voice tight. "This is not the time. We can discuss the details privately after the gala." I didn't respond. I just kept walking. Leona moved toward the microphone, her PR instinct screaming that this needed to be controlled, managed, spun into something salvageable. Harlan stepped into her path. Not aggressively, not obviously, just positioned his considerable presence between her and the microphone in a way that made intervention impossible without creating a scene. "I think we should hear from Russell," Harlan said to the audience, "since we just announced the dedication of his personal estate." The whispers grew louder, donors turning to each other, confusion spreading through the ballroom like ripples in water. I passed tables where I'd sat at previous galas, where I'd shared stories about Estelle with donors who'd believed in our mission. Their faces showed confusion, concern the beginning of understanding that something was very wrong. I passed the promotional banners Leona had designed, featuring Lyle's professional headshot and taglines about carrying forward the legacy and innovation through compassion. I passed the LED screens still frozen on Estelle's image from the video, her spliced voice still echoing in the architectural acoustics of the ballroom. Rowena and Thornton flanked me like bailiffs escorting evidence to trial. The security guards who had blocked me at the entrance of the first gala, the ones who'd told me my name wasn't on the list, who'd checked their tablets twice before turning me away, now stood at attention against the walls, recognizing that Harlan Riddle's authority superseded Leona's stage management. I reached the foot of the stage. Lyle stood above me, still holding the microphone, still trying to project control, while his composure crumbled at the edges. I looked up at my son, the son who had just announced to 300 people that I had voluntarily dedicated my estate to his vision. The son who would claim my generosity while I was still alive to contradict every word. The son who had killed Jennifer Calloway and 46 other patients with budget line items and fake invoices. The son I was about to destroy in front of everyone who mattered. "Hello, Lyle," I said, my voice carrying in the sudden silence. "We need to talk about that estate donation you just announced." Harlan stepped aside, ceding the microphone to the man whose estate Lyle had just publicly claimed. I stood at the auxiliary podium, the sealed envelope in my trembling hands. The wax seal Estelle's medical caduceus stamp had remained unbroken for 3 years. Every camera in the room focused on this moment. Lyle's smile from the stage had frozen into something predatory. He didn't know what was coming. 3 years ago, I said, my voice carrying through the ballroom's acoustics. My wife knew she was dying. She also knew someone was stealing from the patients she'd spent her life protecting. She recorded this message in case that person tried to silence the truth after her death. I broke the wax seal with deliberate ceremony, the caduceus crumbling under my thumb. This envelope has been preserved in a bank vault since Estelle's death. I continued pulling out a small USB drive. This is my wife's true final message recorded in her own hand. "Dad," Lyle said into his microphone, his tone shifting to forced calm. "Maybe we should discuss this privately." "No, son," I said, looking directly at him. "Your mother wanted everyone to hear this." Whispers rippled through the crowd. "Is this really happening?" someone breathed. Rowena moved to the ballroom's professional audio system, accepting the USB drive from my hand. Her fingers worked the controls with practiced precision, connecting the drive to the main speakers. The crackle of the audio system as Estelle's voice began was a sound I hadn't heard in 3 years. I noticed the temperature of my own tears on my cheeks, the specific timbre of her voice on the word Russell, the way her recording pronounced my name with the affection of 40 years together. "My name is Dr. Estelle Townsend." Her voice filled the ballroom, clear and unmistakably genuine, nothing like the stilted spliced version from the Passing the Torch video. "If you're hearing this, I've passed away, and the person who betrayed my life's work is still lying about what they've done." The crowd went absolutely still. You could hear the chandelier's crystals shifting in the HVAC current. "I discovered the theft 6 months before my diagnosis." Estelle continued, her voice steady, despite the emotion beneath it. "I wanted to believe it was a mistake. It wasn't. Someone has been stealing from the most vulnerable patients for their own enrichment." Lyle's face drained of color. $287,000, Estelle said, and I heard her voice break. "Stolen over 3 years from end-of-life care funds. Money meant for hospice services, pain management, family counseling. Diverted to personal accounts through fake invoices and shell companies." Gasps erupted from the donor tables. Journalists along the back wall fumbled for recording devices. Are we getting this? A reporter whispered frantically. Every word. Mid-recording, my mind flashed to the day Estelle made this. She sat in our home office too weak to stand, but determined to protect her patients even after death. I remembered holding her hand as she spoke into the microphone, both of them crying. The memory grounded me in the present moment. I'm dying, Estelle said on the recording, her voice wavering. But these patients deserve protection. If you're hearing this after my death, it means the theft continued. It means someone chose personal profit over human dignity. Leona leaned toward Lyle on stage, her whisper harsh enough to carry. What is she talking about? Russell has the forensic evidence, Estelle concluded. Trust him. Protect the foundation I built. Don't let my death become permission for theft. The recording ended with the soft click of Estelle shutting off the device, but you could hear her labored breathing for 3 seconds after the sound of a woman fighting cancer, while fighting to protect something bigger than herself. The ballroom fell into horrified silence. Then Lyle grabbed his microphone, his polished demeanor cracking like ice under pressure. This is a complete fabrication, he shouted, his voice rising with each word. My father is senile. He's been losing his mind for years. Board members on stage physically recoiled from the outburst. This is elder abuse, Lyle continued, pointing at me with a shaking hand. He spliced that recording together. He's trying to destroy me because I wouldn't let him waste Mother's legacy. And Lyle, please calm down, a board member tried to intervene. Calm down. Lyle's voice reached a pitch I'd never heard. Calm down. You're all fools if you believe this senile old man over me. Leona tried to pull Lyle back from the microphone, but he shoved her hand away with enough force that she stumbled. The crowd's shock transformed into disgust. This wasn't a grieving son protecting his father's dignity. This was a desperate man revealing exactly who he'd been hiding beneath the polished exterior. He's manipulated this entire event, Lyle shouted. The lawyers, the recording, the accusations. It's all a fabrication from a confused old man who can't accept that I've made this foundation successful. Security guards began moving toward the stage, uncertain whether to intervene, but recognizing that the situation was deteriorating rapidly. You're watching my father have a mental breakdown. Lyle continued, his face flushed with rage. He's been declining for months. This is what dementia looks like when family members refuse to accept reality. Rowena stepped closer to me, her voice quiet but clear. His mask just shattered on national television. I watched my son destroy himself with every word. The polished foundation director was gone, replaced by a vicious, entitled man, shouting accusations at his father in front of 300 witnesses and media cameras, capturing every second. Journalists were recording everything. Donors were pulling out their phones. Board members were backing away from Lyle like he was radioactive. This was the real Lyle. This was who he'd been hiding beneath the rehearsed speeches and designer suits and carefully managed PR campaigns. And everyone could see it now. The recording is fake, Lyle shouted one more time, his voice hoarse. And I can prove my father is incompetent. The ballroom held its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Thornton Hewitt steps forward from the wings, carrying a tablet and a wireless remote. He doesn't look at me. His focus stays locked on the stunned crowd as he approaches the podium, where Lyle still stands frozen. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Thornton Hewitt, certified forensic accountant. His voice carries the flat authority of someone presenting evidence in court. Mr. Russell Townsend retained my firm 6 weeks ago to conduct a comprehensive audit of the Estelle Townsend Cancer Care Foundation's financial records. What we discovered constitutes systematic fraud spanning 18 months. He clicks the remote. The LED screens flanking the stage, the same screens that displayed Lyle's promotional videos all evening, flicker and change. Spreadsheets appear, ledgers, bank statements. The numbers are large enough to read from anywhere in the ballroom. $287,000 embezzled through fabricated expenses, ghost consultants, and offshore wire transfers. Thornton's finger traces a highlighted column. Every transaction authenticated, every routing number verified, every recipient account traced to entities controlled by Lyle Townsend. The screens shift to show a different document, a list of names with dates and dollar amounts beside them, 47 entries. I recognize some of the names from the files Rowena showed me months ago. 47 patient applications denied during the same 18-month period. Thornton continues. Applications that met all established criteria for approval. Combined requested funding $291,000. denied, while the executive director was stealing a nearly identical amount. Somewhere in the crowd, a woman starts crying. The sound cuts through the shocked silence like broken glass. Lyle finally moves. He lunges for Thornton's tablet. "This is fabricated. He's manipulating you all. My father is senile and desperate and—" Mr. Townsend no longer has authority to speak. Harlan Riddle's voice booms from the front row as he stands. The board chairman's face could be carved from granite. "As the Foundation's largest donor and acting stakeholder representative, I am formally calling for the immediate suspension of Lyle Townsend's executive authority pending board review. The anti-exploitation addendum filed with this Foundation's trust has been triggered. Rowena Sinclair, as trustee's attorney, will confirm the legal execution. His access to all Foundation accounts is revoked. His authority over patient care decisions is nullified." The words land like a gavel strike, final, irrevocable. But I'm watching something else that stops my breath. Leona has gone completely still at her table near the stage. Her champagne glass sits forgotten in her hand, the liquid trembling with tiny ripples. She's staring at the screens with an expression I've never seen on her face before. Not anger or defiance, but pure calculation. She's already planning her exit strategy, measuring the distance to the door, deciding which relationships to salvage and which to abandon. My daughter-in-law is a survivor above all else, and she's just realized the ship is sinking. There must be some mistake. Lyle's voice has gone thin, desperate. "I can explain the transactions, standard operating procedures, approved expenses. You're misinterpreting. Perhaps this will clarify." A new voice cuts through his protests. Zachariah Whitfield steps onto the stage, impeccable in his charcoal suit, carrying a leather portfolio. The senior banker's presence carries the weight of financial consequence. "Mr. Lyle Townsend, on behalf of Philadelphia Trust and acting under the emergency financial fraud protocols filed this morning, all accounts linked to the Estelle Townsend estate are hereby flagged and frozen pending court-ordered recovery proceedings. This includes the Bryn Mawr residence, the Mercedes S-Class, the Vale timeshare, and all investment accounts traced to estate distributions." He extends a document. Lyle doesn't take it. The paper hangs in the air between them until Zachariah sets it on the podium. "You can't do this." Lyle looks out at the crowd searching for allies. "Someone call building security. My father has orchestrated a hostile takeover. He's incompetent. He's confused. I had him evaluated by professionals who confirmed—" The screens change again. Video footage this time, raw and unedited, marked with timestamps, and Studio B, Camera 2 in the corner. The image shows Lyle and Leona in the production studio, sitting in director's chairs laughing. The audio crackles to life. "The old man's too stupid to know what we're doing." Lyle's voice from the speakers casual and cruel. "He sits in that house talking to her ghost while we build an empire." Leona's laugh echoes through the ballroom. "Did you see his face when Dr. Chen mentioned the memory problems? He actually believed we were trying to help him." The dementia angle is perfect. We get him declared incompetent. I take full control of the estate, and the Foundation becomes whatever we want it to be. Estelle built the infrastructure. We just monetize it properly. The footage continues. 45 seconds that destroy whatever sympathy might have remained. Lyle and Leona mocking me, planning my legal destruction, laughing about manipulating the Foundation Estelle died creating. I don't watch the screens. I watch the crowd. Disgust spreads across faces like spilled ink. Board members stand and walk toward the exits. Donors gather their spouses and leave without a word. The Philadelphia Inquirer reporter in the back row types frantically on her phone. "Turn it off!" Lyle's voice breaks on the words. "Please, just turn it off." But Thornton lets the footage play to completion. When it finally ends, the silence in the ballroom feels heavy enough to crush bone. I've seen enough. I've done what I came to do. Estelle's voice exposed the theft. Thornton's evidence documented the crime. Harlan's declaration executed justice. The rest is just aftermath, and I don't need to watch my son's complete destruction. I stand and button my jacket, walk down the center aisle toward the exit. People step aside as I pass. Some look away. Others nod respect. I keep my eyes forward, my pace steady. Behind me, I hear Lyle calling my name. "Dad, Dad, please, we can fix this. We can talk about this. Don't walk away from me." I don't turn around. Don't break stride. Don't acknowledge the pleading in his voice. I reach the ballroom exit and push through the heavy doors into December night air. Behind me, through the glass, I can see Lyle still frozen on stage under the glaring lights, surrounded by cameras and horrified board members. His mouth moves, but no sound reaches me anymore. I don't go home after the gala. Instead, I sleep on the couch in what used to be my office at the foundation. The foundation office feels like a crime scene I'm supposed to clean up alone. Morning light finds me at Estelle's old desk, surrounded by printouts of news coverage. The Philadelphia Inquirer headline reads, "Cancer Foundation executive caught embezzling $287,000 on live TV." Smaller outlets are less restrained. The gala footage has gone viral. Rowena arrives at 8, carrying 2 coffees and a thick folder. She sets 1 cup in front of me, without comment, then opens the folder. 47 donors emailed overnight, she says. Most are furious at Lyle, not you. 3 already sent additional contributions specifically to replace the stolen funds. I look up from the newspaper. What? Eleanor Whitmore sent $50,000. Her note said, "Your wife saved her sister when insurance failed them. Watching you honor her memory by exposing corruption restored her faith in institutional integrity." The folder contains 43 more messages like it. Donors who watched the gala broadcast, who saw Lyle's exposure, who understood what it cost me to destroy my own son publicly. They're rallying behind the foundation. I want every transaction audited, I tell Rowena. Every donation Lyle touched gets refunded with a personal apology from me, no exceptions. That could take months and cost. I don't care what it costs. Estelle built this on trust. We rebuild it the same way. My hand trembles as I sign the authorization for independent audit. 3 years of planning one night of public destruction, and now the quiet work of rebuilding what my son burned down. The afternoon brings different work. Rowena pulls up the denied grant applications on her laptop. 47 lines, each one a cancer patient Lyle deemed less important than luxury branding. And start with the most recent, I say. She clicks. Amanda Breslin, mother of 2 in Germantown. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Applied for $22,000 for hospice care 3 weeks ago. Lyle denied it the same day he approved $40,000 for Leona's PR firm. A dying woman, 2 children, hospice care denied, so my daughter-in-law could rebrand stolen charity. Get me her family on the phone. Rowena hesitates. Russell, you don't have to personally. Get them on the phone. 5 minutes later, a woman's voice answers, tired, wary. Hello, Mrs. Breslin, this is Russell Townsend from the Estelle Townsend Cancer Care Foundation. I'm calling to tell you your mother's hospice care is fully funded again as of today. I'm deeply sorry for what my son did. Silence. Then I saw the news, the gala. I thought nobody would actually help now. Your mother deserves that care. The money will be in your account tomorrow morning. If there are other expenses, other needs, call me directly. She starts crying. I grip the phone tighter and let her. How many families like the Breslins suffered while Lyle bought luxury consultants, and Leona's PR firm thrived on stolen hospice funds? By evening, I've personally called 11 families, reinstated 11 grants, apologized 11 times for my son's cruelty. Harlan arrives as I finish the 12th call. The trust amendment protects you legally, he says quietly, but this level of personal restitution isn't required. It's required by me. He nods, studies my face. You're putting every stolen dollar back into patient care. Every dollar, every patient, no matter how long it takes. Rowena looks up from her laptop, her eyes bright. Estelle would be proud. The courier arrives at 6:15, just as we are preparing to leave. Professional delivery service requiring signature. Rowena signs for it and tears open the envelope. Her face goes carefully blank as she reads. What is it, I ask. She hands me the papers. Emergency motion for temporary guardianship and psychiatric evaluation. Filed by Lyle Townsend against Russell Townsend. Certain phrases jump out: grief-induced dementia, undue influence from interested parties, demonstrable incompetence requiring immediate intervention. He's claiming you're mentally incompetent. Rowena says, her voice tight with controlled fury. That I've manipulated you into destroying his reputation for financial gain. That Harlan and I exploited your grief to seize foundation control. He's still using the same lie. As I say, the words come out flat, almost emotionless. Even after everything. Harlan takes the documents and reads quickly, his lawyer's mind parsing the filing. This won't succeed. The gala footage proves your competence beyond reasonable doubt. You orchestrated complex legal operations, executed flawlessly, demonstrated perfect recall and strategic thinking. But I hear the hesitation in his voice. But he can delay things, tie up foundation operations for weeks while the court schedules hearings, orders evaluations, reviews evidence. I flip to the final page. The same fabricated incidents, the same twisted interpretations of normal grief, the same lies Lyle and Leona laughed about in studio footage that played at the gala. He's learned nothing. Even with his fraud exposed, his theft documented, his cruelty broadcast to hundreds of witnesses. He's still painting himself as victim of my supposed incompetence. When's the hearing? I ask. Harlan checks the filing. 6 days, December 18th. Judge Harrison Caldwell presiding. Lyle's demanding immediate psychiatric evaluation and temporary guardianship pending outcome. Rowena makes a sound between a laugh and a sob. He wants guardianship, after stealing from cancer patients, after mocking your grief on camera. It's desperation, Harlan says. Final pathetic attempt. If he gets you declared incompetent, he can argue the gala was orchestrated by manipulative advisors, that your testimony is unreliable, that the whole case is tainted. I set the papers down on Estelle's desk. Outside the window, Philadelphia's downtown lights glow in December dusk. The city looks peaceful from this height, none of the chaos visible. Harlan sets the injunction on my desk with a heavy sigh. The hearing is scheduled in 6 days. I look out at the Philadelphia skyline, office lights scattered across buildings like distant stars. One more courtroom, one more public battle with my son. The judge asks me to recite the foundation's financial structure from memory, and I realize Lyle's attorney has no idea what he's walked into. 6 days after receiving the lawsuit, I sit in Judge Patricia Hale's courtroom, while Lyle's attorney argues I'm too mentally impaired to manage my own affairs. Judge Hale, a sharp-eyed woman in her late 50s with 20 years on the bench, listens with obvious skepticism. "Mr. Townsend," she says, turning to me directly, "can you explain the foundation's asset structure and how you discovered the embezzlement?" I meet her eyes. The Estelle Townsend Cancer Care Foundation maintains an $8.5 million endowment. $287,000 was stolen across 43 transactions from November 2020 through October 2023. I discovered it when patient grant denials tripled while operating expenses mysteriously increased. Lyle's attorney stands. "Your Honor, grief can create false clarity. Onbo is isomolast ikbal." Wam's counselor. Judge Hale cuts him off. "This man just recited 3 years of financial forensics without notes. Continue, Mr. Townsend." I walk her through the discovery process, the denied applications, Rowena's concerns about budget inconsistencies, Thornton Hewitt's forensic audit, the offshore accounts, the ghost consultants, the fabricated video production expenses. I cite dates, amounts, account numbers. Every detail precise because I've lived with these numbers for 6 months, memorized every transaction that represented a patient my son denied care. Rowena sits in the gallery behind me. I hear her whisper, "You just destroyed their entire case in 4 minutes." I glance across the courtroom at my son. Lyle sits beside his attorney, 40 years old, wearing a suit that probably cost $3,000. Stolen hospice funds turned into Italian wool. He still believes he's the victim here. Judge Hale calls the next witness, Miss Sarah Brennan. Sarah takes the stand, the nursing home administrator, who evaluated me for cognitive impairment back in September. She's nervous, clutching a manila folder. "Ms. Brennan, please explain what you discovered." Sarah opens the folder with trembling hands. "These are intake forms from my facility claiming Mr. Townsend was confused and disoriented during his visits. But I was present for those evaluations. He was completely lucid, answered every question perfectly, demonstrated no cognitive impairment whatsoever." "Then why do the forms indicate otherwise?" Judge Hale asks. "Someone altered these documents after I filed them." Sarah's voice strengthens. "These margin comments aren't my handwriting. These clinical observations aren't my words. Someone forged additional notes to make him appear incompetent." The courtroom goes very quiet. "Who had access to these records?" Lyle Townsend requested copies in October. He said he needed them for planning his father's future care arrangements. I watched Lyle's face go pale. He hadn't expected Sarah to notice, hadn't counted on her integrity. Zachariah Whitfield testifies next, presenting bank verification documents in his methodical attorney's manner. Signature analysis confirms 8 foundation withdrawal authorizations bearing Russell Townsend's signature were forged between March and August 2023. The forgeries are sophisticated but conclusive under forensic examination. 8 forged signatures, falsified nursing home records. How long had Lyle been building this framework of fraud, waiting for the perfect moment to declare me incompetent and seize everything? Judge Hale sets down the documents with deliberate precision. Her expression has moved beyond skepticism into something colder. This lawsuit is dismissed with prejudice. Counselors, you came dangerously close to filing a fraudulent pleading based on fabricated evidence. Mr. Lyle Townsend, you're fortunate your father hasn't filed criminal charges yet. The gavel strikes. Final. 2 hours later, we sit in Zachariah's law firm conference room. Lyle, his attorney Rowena Zachariah, and me. The settlement agreement sits on the polished table between us like a peace treaty after a war nobody won. I have enough evidence for federal prison. I say, looking directly at Lyle. Wire fraud, forgery, embezzlement. But I'm offering this settlement for one reason. I pull out my phone and show them a photo. Greer at her 16th birthday party last month before everything exploded. My granddaughter has Estelle's eyes and her father's smile from before it turned cruel. She shouldn't have to visit her father in federal prison. That's the only reason you're not in handcuffs right now. The terms are simple and non-negotiable. Lyle resigns from all nonprofit board positions permanently. Returns every stolen dollar plus interest within 90 days. Accepts 5 years of financial monitoring by an independent trustee. Stays away from the foundation, its offices, its patients, its events. Any violation triggers immediate federal prosecution with all charges filed. Lyle's attorney reads through the agreement, looks at his client with something between pity and disgust. Take it. You're looking at wire fraud, forgery, embezzlement across state lines. This is mercy you don't deserve. Lyle signs without speaking. Won't meet my eyes. Just scrawls his signature on 4 copies and stands. Walks out of the conference room without a word. The door clicks shut behind him with terrible finality. My phone buzzes 10 minutes later. Text from Lyle. You murdered my entire life. I read it aloud to Rowena, still sitting across from me in the empty conference room. The words hang in the air between us. She shakes her head slowly. Still blaming you, still playing victim. He learned absolutely nothing. No, son, I say quietly to the phone screen. You did that yourself. I just stopped you from killing anyone else's. I delete the text without responding and look at the settlement agreement on Zachariah's desk. The foundation is safe. The patients are protected. Estelle's legacy is secure. Every goal I set 6 months ago when I started planning this has been achieved. But I've lost my son forever. Not to death, not to distance, but to choices. His choices. The lies he told the patients he hurt the trust, he betrayed the mother he dishonored. And somehow that feels worse than any grief I've known. The doorbell rings at 9:40 p.m. on New Year's Eve, and through the security camera, I see my son standing at the gate. 3 months have passed since the courthouse. 3 months of rebuilding the foundation, reinstating grants, apologizing to families. 3 months of silence from Lyle. Now he's here. I open the door. Lyle stands on my front porch alone. No Leona beside him, no attorney, no righteous anger. He looks smaller than I remember, thinner. His eyes are red-rimmed, like he's been crying for days. Can we talk? He asks. I step aside and gesture to the porch table. The same wrought iron table where Estelle served birthday cakes and celebrated Greer's first words. We sit on opposite sides. I destroyed everything Mom built because I couldn't stand being in her shadow. His voice cracks on the words. I told myself I was improving it, modernizing it, making it sustainable. But I was just stealing and lying and hurting people because it made me feel powerful. I wait. Don't speak. Let him finish. I don't know how to fix that, Lyle continues. But I want to try. Not for you. Not even for Greer, though she won't speak to me anymore. For Mom. For the patients I hurt. I want to try. Wanting isn't fixing, I say. What will you actually do? He doesn't have an answer. I look at him across this table where we've shared so many moments, birthdays, holidays, celebrations. Some thresholds you cross toward joy. Some you cross toward accountability. This is the second kind. I pull a folded document from my jacket pocket. I've been carrying it for 2 weeks ever since Rowena suggested I prepare for this possibility. 12 months. I say, sliding the paper across the cold metal surface. Therapy every week with a trauma counselor who specializes in financial crime psychology. Restitution work at the foundation under Rowena's supervision. Filing patient outreach janitorial work. No authority, no recognition, no redemption speeches at galas. Just work. Lyle reads through the framework. His hands shake slightly. You'll report to Rowena monthly. You'll attend board meetings as an observer only. You'll write personal apology letters to every denied patient supervised by the therapist. You violate any term the settlement voids and federal charges proceed immediately. And after 12 months, he asks quietly, we'll see if you're still showing up. That's all I can offer right now. He folds the document carefully, puts it in his pocket. Thank you. I don't say you're welcome. Don't offer an embrace or absolution. Just nod once. He stands and walks back to his car. I watch him drive away into the December night taillights disappearing around the corner. Inside my study, I sit at Estelle's old desk and pull out the updated patient grant list. 43 families, every single denied application, reviewed and reinstated. I sign each approval, personally black ink, on white paper. Amanda Breslin's mother receives full hospice care, funded retroactive reimbursement, processed family debt cleared. I sign her granted approval and think of all the families who will never know how close they came to losing care while my son bought luxury branding consultants. The foundation survived, more than survived, transformed. Transparent financial reporting published monthly. Independent auditors review every transaction. Dual signatures required on all major disbursements. The board meetings I once avoided are now rigorously structured oversight sessions. Estelle would approve of the changes. She'd hate why they were necessary, but she'd recognize that broken systems can become stronger when rebuilt correctly. Maybe people work the same way. On my desk sits a drawing Greer gave me last week. A bright red heart in colored pencil. The word hope written across it in her teenage handwriting. She visits every Sunday, now helps me sort patient applications, asks questions about her grandmother's work. She doesn't know if she'll ever forgive her father, but she's trying to hope anyway. At 11:30, I open my laptop and pull up the unedited home videos I collected 6 months ago. I find the one I've been avoiding Estelle in our garden 3 years before she got sick, talking about the foundation's mission. I press play. She's wearing her gardening clothes, dirt on her hands, laughing at something I said off camera. The sound of her voice still hits me like a physical blow. The work isn't about recognition. Russell, she says, looking directly into the camera. It's about showing up when people need you most, even when it costs you everything. That's the only measure that matters. I let the video play through, watch her prune roses and talk about patient care philosophy, and wave at a neighbor passing by. Ordinary moments I didn't know to treasure when I had them. It cost everything my love, I say to her image on the screen. But the patients are safe. Your legacy is safe. I kept my promise. The video ends. I close the laptop. From my desk drawer, I pull out the original evidence binder. 3 years of financial records, forensic reports, forged signatures, denied applications. The entire case documented in meticulous detail. I don't need it anymore. Copies are with Zachariah, with the auditors, with the foundation's legal files. But I'm keeping this one. Physical record of what happened preserved. I place Greer's hope drawing on top of the binder and carry both to the safe in the corner of my study. The same safe where I stored Estelle's original recording 6 months ago, planning the exposure. Outside my window, I hear distant fireworks. Someone's starting their celebration early. I set the binder and drawing inside the safe. Lock the door. The mechanism clicks shut with mechanical finality. This wasn't about revenge. I realize that now standing here as midnight approaches. It was about repair. Estelle's mission damaged, then restored. Trust broken, then rebuilt. A family destroyed by choices now facing the long work of healing, not through erasure or easy forgiveness, but through deliberate daily action. A new year cannot wipe away the old, but it can finally begin repair, 1 month at a time, one grant at a time, one choice at a time. Through the study window, I watch the clock tower downtown. 11:59. The seconds tick toward midnight. The safe is locked. Greer's drawing of hope preserved on top of 3 years of evidence. 43 families funded. The foundation transformed. My son standing at a threshold, finally broken enough to maybe start rebuilding. Estelle's voice still echoes in my memory. Showing up when people need you most, even when it costs everything. The clock strikes 12. Fireworks explode across Philadelphia's skyline in brilliant cascades of light. A new year begins. I'm 71 years old, a widower estranged from my son, but not without hope. The work continues. And to you, listening to my story, remember this family betrayal cuts deeper than any stranger's cruelty ever could. Looking back, I made mistakes. I trusted too completely. I stepped away from Estelle's foundation when grief overwhelmed me, leaving a vacuum my son filled with corruption. I ignored the early warning signs because I wanted to believe Lyle had grown into the man his mother hoped he'd become. Don't make my mistake trust yes, but verify, especially when vulnerable people's lives hang in the balance. The lesson I learned through this painful journey is that accountability and mercy aren't opposites, they're partners. I could have sent Lyle to prison, the evidence was airtight. But I believe God put that choice before me to teach me something justice without the possibility of redemption is just revenge. Real strength isn't in destroying your enemies. It's in protecting the innocent while leaving a door open for the guilty to walk through if they're willing to do the work. Family betrayal doesn't have to mean family destruction. It can mean family transformation one hard choice at a time. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you experienced family betrayal like this? How did you handle it with accountability, with mercy, or both? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you want more stories like this, subscribe to Revenge Dad. Your perspective matters here. Thank you for staying until the very end. Your time and attention mean everything to me. One final reminder. Certain details in this story have been fictionalized for privacy and storytelling purposes. What matters most is the message that even our deepest wounds can become pathways to wisdom if we're willing to learn from them.